The following has been brought to you by SJP World Media.
Hall of Flame, no opinions are the same. Lovely chocolate in the bin for the poll, who will win? Cream soda wrestling, dimple dick ranting, air fryer Brussels sprouts, Maxi often cheats. Hey yo, let's start the show. CWF are set to go. Many movies I won't know, such a fiasco. Max v Cy was pretty crap, probably won't go back to that. Max needs to wear a hat, and he sometimes cheats. Hogan is a liar, but Barry Windham is the
worst
thing. Hogan is a liar, hear all about it on Chain Wrestling.
You were very quiet then.
Was I? Can you hear me now? Am I loud enough? Hello, hello, hello. Is that better?
You were very loud, and you look very dashed with that centre parted hair.
It's not centre parted, look. It's just.
It's
don't, Magsy, because I'm going to have to get the wife to come upstairs and tie my hair out for me. I'll get all paranoid. Hey yo, Magsy, back off your holidays. How you doing?
I am. Yes, I'm doing great. Lovely, super smashing, lovely.
Super smashing love. Who used to say that?
Jim Bowen.
Was it? Oh yeah. Yeah. Here's what you could have won.
On Bullseye. Yeah.
Yeah, I like Bullseye. Bullseye was great. Bullseye was great.
It was.
It was. Yeah, it was. Yeah. They remade it, didn't they? They weren't the same. They weren't quite as good.
It was Dave Sparky, weren't it? I'm sure we'll bring it up.
Yeah, fair point. I've got a meowing cat in there. Are you aware that we've got a new cat, by the way? Has this come up? I think this has come up on the show, hasn't it?
No, I am not aware.
Okay. Basically, then, if you're not aware, then I probably haven't said it on the show. A friend of Liv's had some cats, but because their housing situation was changing, they had to get rid of a couple of pets. And one of them is a 1-year-old cat named Pixie. The name we're not fond of, but it is what it is. And basically, they've asked me in a moment of weakness, and we have rehomed the cat for them. And she is basically living upstairs in our bedroom at the moment, acclimatizing to her new surroundings and the new cats and so on. So she's making a goddamn racket right now, right by the door. So if you hear her at any point, I apologise. You'll probably see her jumping up behind me at some point because she sleeps on the bed over there somewhere. So, but yeah, I've got another cat, Wags.
That's not like you.
No.
Not really a cat person, are you?
I'm not, mate. I'm not. I tend to avoid them if I can. Dan Griffin in the
chat. Oh, they tend to avoid you.
Yeah, well, this is it, yeah. Has Cy got his hair down after I accused him of moonlighting as a wrestler last night? Actually, I've not long got out of the shower, so my hair is down. But Maxie's already said I got a centre part in, so I might need to put it up again because I'm going to get all paranoid.
I asked him the exact same thing, Dan.
Yeah.
And he fobbed me off as well. Although I did see him putting away the FTW title just as we were about to start recording.
Yeah. I was flattered that Dan likened me to that wrestler in the group chat on WhatsApp that he sent the picture of. I was flattered because that guy is in far better shape than I.
Didn't you call him a pillock? I'm sure you called him a pillock.
I didn't call him a pillock. I just said that my hair is better than his. But then on the flip side, his beard is better than mine.
Yeah, and less grey.
Oh, totally less grey. 100% less grey. 100%. Maxie, it feels like it's been years since we've seen each other. There she is. Hello.
And there's your cat.
Yeah, it feels like it's been years since we've seen each other. You know, years and years.
Years. Yeah. It was literally, a fortnight Not even a
I know, but
fortnight.
it seems
Was it a
like.
fortnight? Yeah, it was a fortnight.
But a lot's happened in that time, Max. A lot's happened in
It
that
has.
time.
It has.
You've gone on holiday. I went to Stone Dead Festival.
You did.
We've had wrestling events galore. Loads have happened.
But the most important thing that's happened over the last couple of weeks is that we've got a new podcast on the network. And it's absolutely amazing. As you know, I don't really listen to many podcasts nowadays, but I've made a point of listening to you and Charlie this morning, and what a bloody good podcast that was. I've got a few notes, a few queries maybe.
Okay.
Firstly, you and to a lesser extent Sharon both sound like you should have a piece of straw in the corner of your mouth, like you're a bygone farmers.
I don't think I sound that bad.
Charlie's got such a posh accent compared to you. Like she doesn't sound like she's from deep dark Gloucester. She's got a really good. She's got a really good voice for audio. I really invested. I think that you and her have a brilliant kind of dichotomy when it came to the wrestling, at least. With her having this kind of that positive outlook, and you being the wizened old wrestling fan veteran who hates absolutely everything new. And I think you really kind of vibed well off each other. She's more diplomatic than you are, especially when it comes to questions from the likes of fucking King Pig Bladders, saying that we should start talking about fucking knitting, twat. And also, I do agree with you that I would say that Barry Windham is shit and slow. But this leads me on to the first segment of the show.
Pimple alert!
Oh, a teeny weeny.
So are we doing that before we actually start the show, are we?
Yeah,
is that what we're doing now?
Because I need to get this off my chest.
Okay, you crack on.
This week's surprise pimple dick is Sar Powell. For two very specific things that he did during this podcast. Firstly, he said that Charlie is his new favourite co-host. And he bagged off me, and he bagged off Dan, and he bagged off Morty, bagged off everyone who he's done work with. Like, we haven't been here for years and years carrying this motherfucker to podcasts, and he bags us off as soon as Charlie's up to the job. So you're a shithead for that. And then, secondly, and probably the worst thing, you spent the majority of the show trying to encourage your teenage daughter to swear. How dare you? How absolutely dare you? So you're this week's Pinkle Dick. But what a brilliant show. What an absolutely brilliant podcast. I really love Charlie's thoughts and on wrestling. I'm excited to hear what's next. I believe it's about Sid, and I got a little sneak peek in the green room where it's recorded. Yeah, she's brilliant. She's way better at podcasting after one show than we are after 131.
Totally. I mean, I was hoping she'd be here now in case we heard, to hear us talk about anything like this. But yeah, she was absolutely fantastic. Episode 2 is already recorded, edited, and so on. It's coming out on Wednesday, I believe. So as we are live now on the Monday night, or if you're listening on the Tuesday when the audio version comes out, it's coming out on the Wednesday of this week. It's a bit shorter because most of our podcasts are going to be half hour, 45 minutes, I think. The fact that this was the first one and we were looking at a whole pay-per-view led it to be a bit longer. The idea of the show is that we literally see what Charlie thinks about certain topics, and we sort of handpick bits. So as opposed to looking at a whole album, if we cover some music, we'll select a couple of songs. As opposed to watching a whole season of a TV show, we'll look at one particular episode, that kind of thing. So they're going to be a bit shorter. Episode 2 is, because of the timing of when it was recorded and what's happened in the wrestling world, is looking at Psycho Sid. Actually, the only footage of Sid that Charlie had ever seen was wobbly leg Sid when he broke his leg out. I think it was Sin, the pay-per-view was called, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah, so that's the only footage that she had seen of Sid. So this was her first match of Sid. So we looked at Shawn Michaels versus Sid Vicious from Survivor Series 96, which I think is probably his best moment in the WWF overall, I would say. So yeah, and again, it's a great conversation. I do try to get her to swear again. She tells me off. And then when I try to get her to swear a second time, she says, "You've already had your one attempt on this episode, Dad. Leave it alone now." So, but no, she did brilliant. She did really well. I'm really proud of her. And she's really excited about future episodes already. Episode 3, she has chosen what we're going to look at. And then from there onwards, we're hoping people will tweet into the show or give us a shout on the social medias or whatever with ideas of TV episodes, old game shows, music, old wrestling matches or whatever that Charlie won't have seen, and we'll get her opinion. And again, like you said, Maxie, it's old man shouting at cloud versus young person's viewpoint. So yeah, I think it made for quite an interesting dynamic. But I'm really glad that you took the time to listen to it, mate. I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're more than welcome. It was my pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And if you have not heard it yet, please do so. It's on the main SJP World Media feed, and you can also follow the show on Twitter at Charlie Thinks. So make sure you're checking that out. Shall we start the show now, Max?
We might as well. Let's crack on.
Yeah? Seeing as if I did that, if I changed the running order, you just sit there and you do that whole thing where you go, whoa, 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 like that.
But I was promoting an amazing podcast, so I'm more than allowed to change the format for that.
Fair enough. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever and whenever you may be listening or watching from. This is Chain Wrestling Live. We are back once again. An SJP World Media production, episode 161. I am Si. And with me, as always, is the Stephen Regal. To my Gloucester Regal, it's a really dirty, gross Weatherspoons, Magsy. It's horrid. It is mank. It's like where all the homeless people go to try and sneak a couple of quid together to get a breakfast. And so it's mank, mate. It is absolutely rancid. But it's cheap booze, so go there quite often. The 4 Brawl. To my Drunken Crawl, which I did pretty regular at Snowden Festival this past weekend, and a podcaster who I hope had a lovely time on holiday in the sunshine. See an Oasis reference there, look, so they just got back together.
Brilliant.
See? This show is topical. This show is relevant.
And I didn't get tickets.
No, did you try?
I did.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Okay, what number were you in the queue? Like 4 billion or something?
It was, when I quit, it was 932,260 odd.
Oh my word.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
It's ridiculous.
Those of you who wanted to see Oasis and have missed out, I can recommend an Oasis tribute band called Oasis-Is. They play all over the UK, and I've seen them a couple of times at our local guild hall, and they are very, very, very good indeed. They're worth a watch. It's a good night out for a tenner, and then
not really the same.
No, it's not really the same. No, but it's an alternative, isn't it? Maxie, let's see who has joined us in the chat early doors, my friend.
Let's do it. So, firstly, it's the first lady of the SJP network, and also mother to one of the best podcasters to come out in the last few weeks. It's Sharon, and she says it's Monday night. You know what that means. Dan Griffin, hello, sir. How are you? He says, well, fondle my folds and call me Freddy. Okay. For the first time in a fortnight, it's fucking chain wrestling. Yeah, and you know what? We miss it. We absolutely miss it. When I was on my hollybobs Monday evening, I was looking around and thinking, I could easily be podcasting with my brother from another mother, Sarah. And I just a little tear come down my eye. And I have to spend it with family, which everybody hates, don't they?
It's not the same, is it?
It's definitely not the same. You can't pick your family, but you can certainly pick your CWF.
That's it.
Connor, hello, sir. How are you? From over the pond, he says, hey, yo. Then Dan says, has Sar got his hair down after I accused him of moonlighting as a wrestler last night? Yes, he has. He's actually now doing a tribute act to that wrestler. So you'll see
That's
him
right.
at your local bingo halls very, very soon.
It's a very niche role that is as well.
There's not much call for it.
You don't get many bookings, but I'm here if anyone wants it.
Yeah. And Dan then says Sar's new pussy came up on the Doctor, the recording for the Doctor Who pod. And he also mentioned his cat, I've been told.
That's it, yes.
Then I get a little bit of grief here. So Connor says, why is it so hard for you to just enjoy things, Mags? And then Dan says, get your head out of your hoop, Mags. You know Charlie's better than all of us. I did not say that she wasn't. I literally said at the end, after one podcast, she's better than us. I just didn't like being dumped at the altar by my podcast wife here for his new partner. I felt abused and thrown away like yesterday's trash. Anyway, I'll get over it. Dan then says he'd like to hear Charlie's thoughts on Faulty Towers to half revive a forgotten SJP World Media podcast. Yes,
sure.
Or perhaps Babylon 5.
Not gonna happen.
Okay. Ben Dan says, did you see the guy who said you could skip to the front of the queue for OS tickets by pressing Alt F4 and fucked over loads of people? That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Something I would do just to make sure that I could get in the queue. But the websites were fucked anyway.
Really?
Yeah. Ticketmaster kept freezing, and the other one, which was I think Gigs and Tours, that just broke down within minutes, and you couldn't get access to it at all. Yeah, it was a shambles of a sale, but the demand was massively unprecedented, and it is what it is. I'm sure that there'll be more concerts coming up. I don't think this is it. They'll see the money and they'll want to carry on. So it'll happen again. Dan says, "How was your holiday, magazine?" As sad as asked. You know, it was yeah, but not with any conviction or whether you actually wanted to know.
Oh, no, I was just in boxes, mate. It was...
Yeah, he's got his checklist mentioned. Holiday check, cat check. It was all right. I'm not a massive holiday fan. I hate my family and everything that they stand for. So spending time with them is grim. But I enjoyed myself. It was a few days away, a bit of a break from like the hustle and bustle of life, and just a chance to like recharge the batteries. And the weather was fine. We had some glorious weather, so yeah, it was all right. Dan Griffin then says, I felt abused and thrown away. So Mags is grumpy because he's nursing a semi live on the internet. Oh, that's kind of yeah. I mean, it's just permanently on semi. I'm hoping for the days that it goes full lob, but I think them days may be done.
Permanently on a semi. You probably want to see a doctor about that. That's not
maybe. Yeah, I've got a blue tablet trapped in my throat. That's what it is. But yeah, that's the I can't believe I'm airing my dirty laundry on this, and it's all because you bagged me off for your daughter. It's just upsetting. Anyway, that's a child caught up with.
Awesome stuff.
I laugh so I don't cry.
Maxie, I watched some modern day wrestling today. Now I know there's people in the chat, and I think yourself as well, who watch a bit of NXT, or at least their special events and so on. And I watched No Mercy today.
I've not watched it yet. I watched Bash in Berlin, but I haven't watched no. I know the results, so it's no spoiler warning needed, but I haven't caught up with it yet.
Okay. I watched Bash in Berlin as well, and that was okay. That was an all right show. I enjoyed that.
I enjoyed it. Yep.
The NXT one, though, I'm not sure about, mate. I mean, first of all, I don't really know anyone who's on it. There's a handful of characters there, a handful of wrestlers there that I'm aware of. Okay. I'm obviously not as invested in the storylines as somebody who watches the weekly TV. Yeah. But once again, WWE do a fantastic job of recapping the whole story just before the match for people like me, I suppose, who haven't tuned in before. So that was quite good. I was caught up by the time the bell rang. It's not, obviously there's been a lot of changes, but it's not the NXT that it once was, is it? That the black and gold was absolutely glorious. It was a fantastic company on its own right. But what we've got now, I mean, there's some guys there I looked at and I thought, okay, they look interesting, they look good. I could get invested in watching some more of them. but there wasn't many on that roster that really grabbed me. And there's a couple I looked at and just thought, what the fuck's that all about? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think you're looking back at NXT Black and Gold, and that was a super indie. That was basically to appeal to wrestling fans that maybe aren't interested in the very watered down commercial version of WWE, but really kind of love that indie scene. And you had massive stars, people who had already made names in the world of wrestling. They went to NXT, but now it's NXT has kind of almost gone back to where it's meant to be a developmental kind of territory, whilst kind of still retaining its third brand status with the wrestlers that come down from Raw and from SmackDown. So the wrestlers that are on there now are being primed to be WWE wrestlers rather than plucking indie superstars and bringing them into NXT. If you understand what I mean. So it's kind of, it's almost in the WWE style of the kind of Raw and SmackDown style of wrestling, but a different brand. So it's not really got the same objective as the Black and Gold version did.
No, that's fair enough, mate. That's fair enough. I suppose AEW has taken over the mantle of what the Black and Gold was, just not anywhere near as good.
I mean, it was at the beginning. And then,
oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, well, we'll get into that with our non-wrestling topic, I suppose. But yeah.
But I really like NXT. I think some of the characters that they're building now, they can absolutely transition over to Raw and SmackDown, which was a massive problem with the Black and Gold NXT. That wrestlers would build their name on their indies, then kind of like cultivate that character, and then on the main roster, it gets thrown away, and there's suddenly the Viking experience or whatever.
Wow.
So I like the way they're building characters that will transition onto main roster and keep that character. So I actually really enjoy the current day NXT.
The tag team champions going into the event, some kind of university kind of thing.
You
right? Okay, I ain't sure about all that. Especially the guy who was wrestling in a knitted jumper and a shirt underneath.
That's
with a goatee.
It's Andre Chase. He's the leader of Chase U. I won't have anything bad said about him. Fuck Ridge Holland for screwing him over. Fuck you, Ridge Holland.
Well, there was that. I was more invested in him when that happened than I was before it happened.
In Andre or in
Ridge Holland, yeah. So the other guy with a little goatee beard and whatever, nah, that's not for me.
There was kind of a almost an interfaction war there. The story was that maybe Duke Hudson would be the person who turned on Andre Chase because he's been feeling a little bit put out how much Ridge has been getting the glory, but it was Ridge the Fridge that did the dirty.
And the women's champion, she's very good. I think she stood out. She looked really good.
So she's from Booker T's reality of wrestling promotion. He's really championed her, but I think she's 23 years old, and she's got everything you need to be an absolute top draw WWE star. But the person who they introduced after Julia, oh my God, she is going to be amazing. So she's a former Stardom wrestler.
Right.
And it was a huge deal, WWE signing her. And then I think she ended up getting injured and doing a few more matches for Rossi Agawa, who created Stardom. He had a new promotion, so she kind of helped him build that up. And now, she's ready to debut, and she's an instant star. She's going to light NXT on fire.
Fair enough, mate. Fair enough. Maxie, shall we then dive into our Hall of Lame Shame segment, or are you going to completely skew with the ordinary traditional running program again?
No, that I just needed to mention how much of a pimple dick you were.
Cheers.
Anyway, let's go for it.
So you have a Hall of Fame this week, then?
I do. Very positive.
So do I. So do I.
Wow. Great minds think alike.
There we go. What have you got, Mags?
So this is one that I was going to cover a couple of months ago, but something else came up, and then it kind of got pushed into the background. But I was reminded of it from a video from OSW, old school wrestling, who do like the three Irish guys who do reviews. They mentioned it on the latest video, and I thought now's the time to bring it up because it's back fresh in my mind. So wrestling has a history of dragging in sportsmen from other disciplines, and one of the main ones is usually American football. We've had like Goldberg become a huge star, but there's one that doesn't necessarily get as much praise as he should. So I'm talking about Monty Brown. He was an outside linebacker signed by the Buffalo Bills. He played in the Super Bowl in 1994. He then ended up signing later in his career for the Patriots. And the reason that he actually signed for the Patriots at the time, there were a lot of other franchises interested in him. He said it was as close to Stamford, Connecticut as he could get, and that's where the WWF offices were. So he's been a lifelong wrestling fan. Unfortunately, his football career didn't last too long. He ended up being injured in 1997 and got an ankle injury, and that put pay to that. So he started training wrestling. He trained with the likes of Dan Severn, Sabu, and after about 5 years of solid wrestling training, he started to do indie shows in his hometown area in Michigan. And very quickly, he was scouted by people working for TNA, NWA TNA, and he made a few appearances on their weekly kind of pay-per-view shows. But eventually, his persona and his character really caught the eye of the upper brass at TNA, and they signed him to a long-term contract. He started wearing the leopard print and claiming to be from the Serengeti, calling himself the alpha male, and he really made a massive impact very early into his TNA career. He quickly rose to the top of the card. He never quite made it as the NWA champion, but he had a few opportunities there. But he always wanted to wrestle for the WWF. That was what he grew up with as a child, and when that opportunity came, he jumped at it. And unfortunately for him, he ended up in the ECW bastardization that WWE were coming up with. He had his name. He had his name changed to Marquise Corvon, and then quickly to just Marcus Corvon, and he was quite a big star on the third brand. He was part of a faction called the New Breed, and they had a feud going on with the ECW originals. But his WWE ECW career never really got a chance to get off the ground. We quickly learned a report that he was taking some time off for personal issues, and unfortunately, Monty never returned to WWE or to wrestling. So you have to wonder, how is this a Hall of Fame? He's had a football career that was good, but not stand out. His wrestling career was short-lived. He didn't win any major titles. So how is this a Hall of Fame? And it's the reason why he quit wrestling. The personal issues that he was dealing with was that his sister got cancer, and she very quickly went in a downward spiral, and she ended up dying. And Monte quit his dream job of being a wrestler to adopt and look after his sister's children. WWE left his contract open for a return, obviously, because they knew the situation that was going on. But he never did, and he decided to retire from pro wrestling and focus on raising his sister's kids. So for that alone,
right,
and the sacrifice that this guy made for family, he has to go in the Hall of Fame. So this week's Hall of Fame for me is the alpha male Monty Brown.
That is fantastic. I'll be honest, when you started talking about him, again, the ending of that story I wasn't aware of. So you're right, when you sat there and you said, doesn't really sound Hall of Fame worthy. And I'm sat there thinking, yeah, you're right, Max. Where are you going with this? Was in my head. But oh yeah, 100%. That is, what a fantastic story. What an absolute top fella.
I mean, the guy had he pursued his dream of being a wrestler. He made millions of dollars as a football player, and he just went and pursued his dream. He got to the big show, albeit ECW, and was more than willing to give that all away when it came down to the brass tacks. And what a star for doing that! Absolutely a star.
Yeah, 100%. That is a fantastic shout, Magsy. Absolutely brilliant. And it's positivity all round this week, my friend, because my Hall of Fame fame is also a Hall of Fame looking at someone who did some good stuff. It's just a smiley, happy episode today, mate. But mine goes back in time. Mine goes back in time a little bit further than recent
TNA
ECW. Oh, no,
mine goes back to 1944.
Well, that you say, oh, shock, because I do like a lot of the older kind of wrestling available, but this is even going back for me. And when you say 1944, you're not far off.
Jesus.
I say not far off. You're about a decade and a bit out. I would like to go and take a little journey back in time to Memphis wrestling in the late 50s. Memphis obviously being... Sorry?
When you first started getting into wrestling.
Yeah, exactly. When I just started getting into it, yeah. In Memphis, Tennessee, and pretty much all over the United States, but especially in these southern states and so on, there was huge race issues. Segregation was prominent still, obviously, it was the 50s. And this kind of two-tier society existed with regards to race, the colour of people's skin. And some fantastic people did fantastic things to get those, I suppose, barriers broken down over time, over years, and so on. And there's still work to be done, of course, but you have to start somewhere. And people talk about different sports. People talk about different actions of famous stories that many people are aware historically, where people say enough is enough and stand up to what they believe, to what they believe is wrong, and so on. The pro wrestling world in Memphis in the late 50s had somebody doing the same thing. And once I read this story, it's something I'm fully aware of from a long time ago, but it's one of those things that I suppose is just rattling around in this fucking empty skull I have in my head. And then every now and again, those thoughts do come to the front, and I'm like, oh yeah. So I looked into it a little bit more. I would like to talk about a wrestler named Spudnik Monroe. Now, this guy, he grew up without a father. His dad died a month before he was born in an accident. He travelled around the territories, wrestling as a heel with various different gimmicks and so on, until eventually deciding upon the name Spudnik Monroe whilst wrestling in Tennessee. Now, in one occasion, when travelling to a wrestling match, Spudnik broke down. He sorted his car out, but was incredibly tired, the story says, and didn't want to drive anymore. He was incredibly tired, thought it might be dangerous. Who knows? There might be more to it than that. He may have had a beer, whatever. The story says that he was tired. We'll go along with that. There was a young black gentleman passing by. Spudnik collared him, sat him down in the car, asked him if he would drive him. He paid him some money, and he got this young black gentleman to drive him to the arena. When in the arena, making his entrance, he put his arm around this young man who had drove him to the venue to receive a chorus of boos and abuse and so on, just because of the colour of this individual's skin. Now, what that then led to is twofold. One, it led to Monroe becoming a super crazy over heel for noticing this heat that he was getting and using it to his advantage. But also, two, it led to him working against this kind of, again, like I said, two-tier system. And the reason I keep coming back to stating it as two-tier is literally that in the arena. The floor seats and ringside and everyone on the deck, those were white only. Anyone who was not white or the black community, they were sold the seats up in the rafters. Didn't matter how much money they had, how much they wanted to buy a front row ticket, whatever. There could have been empty seats at the front. Oh no, they were not allowed down there. Hence why I keep coming back to this two-tier kind of reference point. Spudnik brilliantly lent into his gimmick in real life that he was drawing heat with the racists in Memphis. They were booing him because he was associated with black people in that community. He would dress up in garish, over-the-top outfits, purple suits and canes with diamonds on the top, and just ridiculous nonsense. This is 1957, by the way, so it's just absolutely ridiculous. And he would go and drink in black-only bars. But because he was known to the community, they allowed him in. And he would drink with them, he would buy them drinks, until quite often he would get arrested. The arrest would, of course, then be all over the local news. He would be getting more heat for this. He would then get a small fine. Released. The following night, go and do exactly the same thing again. And this carried on for a long time, to the point where eventually he started hiring a local attorney, a local solicitor, lawyer, whatever, to represent him whenever he got arrested for associating with the black bars and so on. And naturally, Monroe, being the way he is, trying to provoke a reaction and shine a spotlight on what was wrong in this community, would hire a black attorney to represent him, just to double down on it, which is fantastic. The more this went on, the more heat he was drawing. Naturally, that meant the more money he was making, so obviously he was getting rewarded for it, of course, but he was making lots of friends in the black community because he was drinking with them, he was meeting their families, and so on. Until eventually, it got to a stage where the white ticket percentage wasn't what it once was. The business, as all wrestling does, wrestling companies, their storylines, their ticket sales, their stars, whatever they're trying to do, it goes in dips and waves. They were on a bit of a dip. But the black community was still buying tickets to support Spudnik, still buying tickets to come and see their guy. This white guy who was adopted as one of their own, he's their hero. To the point where Spudnik decided one day to tell the promoter, I'm not going out tonight. The arenas, the top tier is full, bottom tier, not so much once again. I'm not going out to wrestle tonight, even though I'm advertised and so on, unless you allow all of my black friends to come down from the top tier and fill the empty seats in the bottom. After much negotiations back and forth, and of course the star of the territory saying, I'm just simply not going to wrestle unless you agree to this, the promoter had no choice. And literally that night ended the segregation at Memphis Wrestling. And from this day forward, from that day forward until present day, obviously that no longer exists, which is a fantastic thing. To give you an idea of how big a star this guy was, the indoor attendance record, the arena attendance record in Memphis was set by Spudnik headlining a pay-per-view. Sorry, no, listen to me. A big event. And that stood right the way through until the Attitude Era and Monday Night Raw. That's how big a deal this guy was in that community and with the black support. It went a long way in pro wrestling in that area, breaking down those barriers, because literally now people could sit together. Whether they wanted to or not, I imagine there'll be some objecting, it is what it is. It made a big, long way. And especially when you consider this is the late 50s, early 60s, that's a big, big step. So my entrant into the Chain Wrestling Hall of Fame this week is Spudnik Monroe.
What a guy. What an absolute guy. I mean, the amount of grief he would have taken in that time period for that stance. And it just goes to show that one person can make a difference. Even when you're swimming against the tide and everybody is saying the absolute opposite, stand your ground and stick up for what you believe in. That's amazing. Amazing story. Absolutely love that. That and Monty Brown, two people who deserve all of the praise. Yeah.
Without a doubt, mate. Without a doubt. Positive, nice, happy little glowy feeling.
I'm liking this. I'm really liking this. Let's ruin it.
Fuck it all up.
Yeah, we're going to ruin it with stuff that we fucking detest. What we used to love.
A couple of comments in the chat there, Magsy. Should we scan through and then get on to our non-wrestling topic?
We shall. So Graham from Good Cop Bad Cop, he's in the chat. He says things he used to like listening at times one, not anymore. So heading back to the start, and we'll catch up at times two. Evening, gents. Then we've got Dan Griffin, even saying Monty Brown was a lightning in a bottling tin. Yeah, it was so good. I mean, one of his last feuds before he went over to WWE ECW was his feud with Samoa Joe, and he kind of set the bar that Scott Steiner would take up when basically calling Samoa Joe fat. And there's a promo where he says Samoa Joe is a hippophant, half hippo, half elephant. And it's just
why?
It's fat shaming. I get that, but the guy was just charisma. It was just charisma personified. Absolutely superb guy. And Dan said he didn't know that about his retirement. What about? Yeah, amazing.
No.
Yeah, it's something that I read about a year ago, maybe, and it's just one of those things that blows you away because you normally think of wrestlers being selfish and not knowing when to give up and needing one last match, and this guy retired and went and did the family thing. It was absolutely an amazing story and just really, really just so positive. And then Dan says he's forgotten about the Sputnik Monroe. Sorry, again, what a man. Yeah, like I said, two guys who deserve all of the praise. Two absolute legends in their own right for very different reasons. So yeah, that's the chat all caught up.
Fantastic stuff. And I'm loving where we're going now with this non-wrestling topic, because as I put to you in a WhatsApp message when we arranged what topic we were going to do, Magsy, it means on the audio version, I've probably already done it by now, I get to play the Choir Boys song, Don't Love You Anymore, which is fantastic. I love having an excuse to play a record I like. It's great. Anyway, let's go.
Let's ruin this positivity with a load of bollocks.
NWT time. Oh! No wrestling talk here. It's the non-wrestling topic.
Lovely.
Nice. Lovely. Nice.
Oh, lovely.
Lovely.
Yes, indeed. Our non-wrestling topic this week is very much a case of I don't like that anymore, or I'm totally over this, or that used to be great, but not so much anymore. Anything that kind of vibe, Maxie, wasn't it?
It is. I mean, it wasn't going to be that. We, to tell the truth and to talk a little bit out of school, Si and I was going back and forward last night, and we were in a little bit of a quandary. We were actually going to throw it to you guys to kind of feed this topic for us, but then a little moment of brilliance came between us, and we came up with this, and I think it's one of our strongest topics.
Yes.
And it's made one of the biggest Steve-O sections that we've ever seen on the channel.
There we go. When we put this tweet out, Maxie, and did the usual, tagged the members of the CWF in and so on, I thought to myself, I said, Self, how quickly...
Because that's how you refer to yourself when you're talking.
Yeah,
Self.
that's right. I said to myself, Self, how quickly is someone going to jump in and say, wrestling? And lo and behold, because I will go through them in the order they came into us, the first response we got was from our friend Connor, at Connor Knows Footy, and his first word is wrestling. I used to be a big wrestling fan.
Non-wrestling topic as well.
This is true.
Connor. So he just loves breaking the rules, does Connor?
He does, mate. He's got quite rebellious and quite lippy as well. I don't know if he's finally hit puberty or whatever, and his hormones are playing up. I'm not sure, but he's getting quite edgy and quite lippy with his attitude sometimes. He told me to sit down the other week. Did you hear about that?
I did not.
Oh,
wow.
Oh,
I think he's hanging around with Matt and Dan. They're rubbing off on him.
You reckon?
Yeah, bad influences. Connor,
No,
you're
they're not rubbing off on him. Not live on our channel, anyway. Dear me. Sorry. Connor says, wrestling. I used to be a big wrestling fan. WWE, New Japan, etc. Now I'm going to stop myself for there. When I first read this, because he's wrote WWE in capitals, rightfully so, I know what that is.
I know what you're going to say. You fucking fool.
He's wrote NJPW for New Japan Pro Wrestling in capitals. I get that. And then he's wrote etc. in capitals. And it took me, I'm going to say, at least 5 minutes, Mags. I was sitting there going, ETC, what company is that? Extreme.
I knew.
And I got as far as like Extreme Territorial. And I was like, oh no, he means etc.
Brilliant.
What a dumbass. Connor says he watched it all the way through until 2020 when shit hit the fan and the empty arena shows just killed my enjoyment of the product. Slowly over time, because there were some damn good shows during that period. Okay, so killed it over time. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, it was a difficult time, actually, wasn't it? I think it's a testament to WWE and any other wrestling company that managed to get any shows on. I mean, AEW did with their restricted crowds at Jackson's Place and whatever it was. Daly's Place, sorry. And I think TNA might have got a show out as well at some point. I'm not 100% sure. But companies did run. I want to say that's brilliant and thank you to them because it managed to give us entertainment whilst we were in lockdown. But it was also horrible at the same time. WrestleMania, literally with no crowds. My word.
It looking back, I'm exactly the same mindset as you. I'm thankful that these companies made the effort to put out shows. They could have easily done what most entertainment did and pack up shop until the COVID had died down. But looking back at the likes of WrestleMania where Drew McIntyre won the title and there was absolutely no sound, or the matches where you could hear every word that the wrestlers were saying and all of the sound that would have been masked by crowd noise. Yeah, it's celebrating in front of no fans. That was just, it was depressing, and it was a reminder that we were going through a horrific time. But I think wrestling has got better very, very quickly. I mean, WWE are doing some of the best work they've done in ages, and AEW is still a thing. So I think it's time to come back to wrestling, Connor. It's time to come back to it.
I watched Raw this week with adverts, Maxie. I watched Raw.
Too far. I'm not that
TNT.
interested.
I watched the pay-per-view as well. I think WWE's fucking crazy hot right now. I think he's doing some brilliant stuff.
Yeah.
I really wish AEW was still at the heights it once was, but hopefully it will return back to those at some point because
Hopefully
we
so.
do need a genuine alternative. But yeah, there we go. Graham at MGB Graham on Twitter. He says, watching movies. When I could get DVDs mailed through Netflix, that's right, kids, look it up. That was a thing. Or then with Redbox, I could watch at 2.4-ish, times 2.4-ish. Now, this is a pretty much gone. So as my film watching, I am not paying cinema prices or watching at times one. I don't have that sort of time. Now, I think this is a load of fucking nonsense, you know.
Okay. Wow.
This whole thing that seems to it's died down a little bit now, but there was a while where it used to get banded around in our little Twitter community about, well, I listen to this on times 3 speed, well, I listen to this on times 4, and I listen to this on times 5, and I listen to this so quickly it's finished before I press play, and all this sort of nonsense. It's like, is it really that big of a brag?
I mean, yeah, because I was doing it and I was one of the leaders. But I will say, like, I had to listen to what Charlie thinks at 1.5 speed because if I went any higher, I've lost that ability. So I need to build that back up if I get back
No,
to
you
listen to
don't.
the podcast.
You don't need to build it back up. Why just listen to the show?
But I also do get Graham's point about movies, not for the same reason as Graham. I think with the likes of Netflix and Amazon Prime, I'm so spoiled as a movie watcher that I have all this choice at my fingertips and I can never pick a film to watch because there's so much choice and it's actually ruined my enjoyment of sitting and watching movies because I no longer have to wait for it to come on TV or wait for the DVD release to come out. It's on Netflix instantly. And yeah, I think I'm spoiled because of it. So I hate that. I wish that went back to the enjoyment of hiring a DVD or going to the video shop and then the disappointment when you see that there's 20 copies of Back to the Future and all of them have been taken out. That kind of thing. Yeah, Netflix is a horrible bastard, but I couldn't live without it.
I can appreciate, going back to the podcast thing, something like that, like say at 1.5, because that's not that much of a jump, but it is noticeable. It's substantial enough. So when you have someone who talks particularly slowly, which I do sometimes, I'll admit that, or you have gaps in the conversation that aren't always cut out, I can appreciate that by speeding it up to that can be beneficial to you for listening to the show. But when you're listening at fucking 10 times normal speed, you can't even fucking hear that. Come on, give your head a wobble.
No, at 5 times I could easily make out what the conversation was, but it also meant I could listen to 5 hours of podcasts in 1 hour.
It just makes everyone sound like those little lemmings computer characters,
No,
doesn't it?
it
They're all
doesn't.
talking like that.
It doesn't change the pitch. It just changes the speed.
No, they all go.
No. They don't go high pitch. The voices are stay the
They're not.
same. No, it just changes the
So
speed.
what was I doing then?
What do you mean? When you
What
were
was I
talking?
doing? Because mine went high pitched. When I
don't know.
sped it up, I think. Or am I just remembering that wrong?
Yeah, you probably are.
Yeah,
I mean, it
probably.
might have sounded more high pitched to you because A, you're not used to it, and B, it's cramming all of your words in a very short space. So
Yeah.
you're not hearing that drop and rising pitch. But yeah, I am now back to listening like a norm, which is disappointing.
Do you not think as well? I mean, we're talking there. I mean, Graham mentions in his tweet about watching films sped up. And I suppose similar to podcasts as well, or audio books, whatever. Would you not miss potentially? You may be able to listen to what's being said and pick up on the content, but little nuances like pauses or little moments for dramatic effect, or even just a natural flow of conversation. Would you not necessarily lose some of that?
That would have to be a question for Graham because I don't think I've ever tried watching movies at
No, mate.
a fast speed. YouTube videos, I will, just because they tend to be background noise rather than I sit there and watch the YouTube video.
Okay.
But yeah,
Just
movies.
something else as well. That's something else as well. But just having like YouTube stuff on in the background. Why don't people play music anymore? Sharon will have her TikTok on with a live TikTok sort of fit. People are doing stuff and whatever. And she's like, "Oh, it's just background noise." I'm like, well, "Why don't you listen to music or something? Like, why don't people listen to music anymore?"
Old man at clouds.
There's a T-shirt in that, mate. There's a T-shirt in that. Chris Bellis at Real Chris Bellis on Twitter. He says, "This is a quite upsetting one for me, really. But the A-Team. Bloody loved my Saturday afternoon Explosion Fest, but I watched a few episodes recently and it was dreadful." Yeah, we spoke about the A-Team before, haven't we, Magsy? It's such a shame.
It's not aged very well, has it? And as adults, you
Nah.
see the flaws in the program. It don't make sense if you've been locked in a shed with the whole army ready to attack, and you've got 3 parps and a fucking screwdriver, and
Toilet roll or something, yeah.
yeah, and all of a sudden you're driving out in a big tank. It don't kind of make sense. And then they made the movie remake, which was fucking ridiculous because they flew a tank in midair, which kind of made no sense. Yeah, watching some of those stuff that you properly enjoyed as a kid, yeah, they don't age well. Same with things like Knight Rider. I mean, I've watched episodes of Knight Rider, and I used to adore that program, and now it's just cringe, absolute cringe.
Street Hawk is one I always bring up as well. I've not seen any Street Hawk back, but I remember Street Hawk being my favourite when I was younger. So maybe that's something we can do for what Charlie thinks. Perhaps we could watch an episode of Street Hawk or the A-Team or something and see what Charlie reckons.
The only thing that I remember from that I was really into as a kid on TV that has aged brilliantly is the cartoons that I used to watch. They're almost timeless. Some of those cartoons, Fantastic Four, Mask, Transformers, Thundercats, but the live action stuff, it gives me the ick.
Yeah, not great, mate. Not great. Ranty Ben at Largely Speaking on Twitter, who we have scheduled recordings for Nitro Nights to return, Magsy. It is in the pipeline. It is being worked on. We've both been very busy throughout August, but the show is coming back. He says chocolate, bubbly or otherwise. So he's not trying to rile you up here. He's just said bubbly. It doesn't matter.
Well, he didn't have to mention the bubbly, did he? So Ben was definitely trying to wind me up.
Oh, okay. He says, Ben, this is, I now find it too rich.
Okay. My recommendation to you, Ben, is get yourself into dark chocolate. That's my go-to now. I
like a bit of dark chocolate, mate.
I love me some dark chocolate. It takes away a lot of that creamy milkiness, which adds to the richness, and you get the pure bitter, almost bitter chocolate flavor. It's so much better. So Ben, I recommend some dark chocolate.
The thing with dark chocolate as well, obviously you've got your expensive brands, but you buy like your 50p Happy Shopper brand. That's just as good.
I mean, not just as good. It's
good.
It's better than the milk chocolate, yeah, granted.
Yeah.
But it's not as good as spending like a £5 on a bar, is it?
I'm not going to spend a £5
I've already get
on
10 more.
Chocolate.
Well, okay.
Would you spend £5 on one bar of chocolate?
It depends what the bar is.
You blatantly spent £5 on a bar of chocolate in your life, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, if it's Lindt, then yeah, I'd have a go. Spend a £5 on it.
That's insane.
Well, dark chocolate is the best.
£5? Fucking hell. Oh, dear me. I go along with it sometimes being a bit rich. You talk about like the milk chocolate and so on. I struggle with Galaxy now. So if the wife has a Galaxy or like a Ripple or whatever like that, and I have a little bit of that, it just go. I know the whole thing about Galaxy is that it's like smooth. It says all over the wrapper, doesn't it? Oh, it's smooth chocolate. they need to wind their necks in a little bit because it's getting too smooth. And now what happens is it gets all in the roof of my mouth and on my tongue, and I'm like, no,
Yes.
no, no. It's too
Yeah.
smooth, mate.
And you're almost forced to let it melt in your mouth rather than jump it down like an absolute animal, which you would normally do with chocolate. But you're there swirling it around your mouth and it's all melting and it's stuck to every part of you.
Yeah, no.
Fuck you, milk chocolate. Dark all the way.
You're a bastard, Galaxy. Also, on that note, I like a pint of milk when I have some chocolate, but with dark chocolate, I like to have a cup of tea. I think the cup of tea after a bit of dark chocolate is almost as good as your first cup of tea after your toasted sandwich. Almost.
So going off onto a tangent, whilst on my hollybobs, I did make a discovery. Now, I think I've mentioned before about I'm a big lover of Yorkshire tea.
It has come up, yes.
Yes, and they did a few kind of like different flavors. They did a jam and toast flavor, which I thought was all right. They did tea and biscuit flavor, which was absolutely brilliant. I discovered that they have done a Biscoff flavored cup of tea. So Biscoff caramelized biscuits, absolutely stunning. Yeah. And the tea is to die for. It is so good. It might be my favorite tea right now.
So a cup of tea that tastes like biscuits.
It still tastes like tea, but you get that mouthfeel of that you've dipped in some Biscoff. And you've got like that aftertaste of Biscoff. It's so good. You need to try it. It's absolutely amazing.
I don't know about that, mate. That sounds like a lot of change.
It's doing you a massive favour as well because you're getting the feeling that you've dipped some biscuits in your brew, but you don't get the calories.
Yeah, but we've been through this before, and then you sit there and go, "Get to fuck" and all that nonsense, right?
That was a really good impression.
I don't dip biscuits in my tea.
But you do eat biscuits with the tea then? Like a mouthful of biscuits and then a gob full of tea?
Well, no, but I don't like put the biscuit in my mouth and then have a mouthful of tea and like let it all swoosh around in my mouth.
No, to wash the flavour down.
Yeah, I might have a couple of biscuits and then a cup of tea, yeah. But it's not very often.
But it gives you that feeling that you've had some biscuits and you're refreshing your palate with tea.
But why don't you just have biscuits then? Why do you need that? Why has that been invented? Why is that necessary? There can't be that much of a demand for somebody to go, do you know what pisses me off? Having biscuits. But do you know what I like? Biscuits in my tea, the taste of it. I wish someone would just do something about that. And Yorkshire tea have gone, whoop, there's a niche in the market. We're going to jump straight in there. Now it's bollocks. What's the point?
There must be a market for it because they're selling off the shelves. So you're in the wrong here, I think. People want to feel like they're eating biscuits, but not have the added calories, I suppose.
Okay, now that makes more sense if it's a calorie thing. But why don't you just lead with that then? I'd save getting me all wound up.
I fucking did say that, but you were too busy ranting about swilling biscuits around your mouth to listen.
Also, right, Biscoff. What did you say it was?
Caramelized biscuit.
Right, okay. I didn't know that. So I've always avoided anything that's Biscoff flavour because I thought it was coffee. And I don't like coffee.
No, it's just biscuits. The sugar that they put in is not just white sugar, it's caramelized first.
Right, okay. But I thought it was like a coffee flavour thing.
You thought Biscoff was a brew in a biscuit. So that is some Inception shit there. You think that Yorkshire tea, Biscoff flavour, is tea flavoured with coffee flavoured biscuits?
No.
So you think it's half tea, half
you're getting
coffee,
that jumbled up
all biscuit. Is that what you're trying to make out?
No, I mean previous to this conversation. Okay, so you have said during this conversation that Biscoff is caramelized biscuit flavor stuff. Okay.
Okay.
That's when I thought to myself, literally then, I thought, okay, so it's not coffee then. Okay, so literally, so say yesterday, for example, I would not have bought something Biscoff flavour because I thought it was coffee flavour, and I
So
don't like coffee.
if you're doing the weekly shop and you saw Yorkshire tea Biscoff flavoured on the shelf, you'd have gone, well, the dirty bastards mixing tea and coffee together. The animals.
Oh,
That's what
it
you
would
would
have
have
raised
thought.
it would have raised some really strange questions in my house. I'll tell you that.
Sharon in the chat, for fuck's sake, I'm married to an idiot. Yes, Sharon. Yes, you are.
Okay.
You are.
Oh dear. Okay, Biscoff cheesecake. See, I thought
Brilliant.
that was like a coffee cheesecake.
You're a dickhead. You're an
Thanks.
idiot. You thought
Oh
it
dear.
was coffee flavored. So anything that has part of another word, you think that that's it because it says Biscoff.
No,
You thought that it was
no,
coffee.
no, don't generalise like that. That's not the case. You know, it's not like my wife's name is Sharon and I think the last three letters Ron means that she's like an old man called Ron or something like that. It doesn't work that way. Okay. It's just it's just I thought with Biscoff because it says cough and it's normally around the tea and stuff. Sharon in the chat saying, "What about Biscoff spread? Oh, I'll have some nice coffee in my sandwich." Well, I don't know because people eat weird shit, don't they?
I think this may be a case where you are the weird one, thinking that everyone else is
Potentially.
weird. Yeah.
I don't know, but you can have people buy weird stuff. You know, for example, there's like coffee flavored ice cream you can get, isn't there?
Yeah. And there's also Biscoff flavored ice cream.
There you go. So there you go. I would have thought that Biscoff flavored ice cream was just another type of coffee ice cream, so I would never have had it.
Okay. So have you ever eaten the biscuit called morning coffee?
No.
Oh, brilliant. Wow, because it's you think that's coffee flavored?
Well, no, I don't think I've heard of that. What is? Was that like
It's
a
like
malted milk sort of thing?
No, it's like more like a rich tea style biscuit, but it's for having with a cup of coffee.
Why don't you just have a rich tea?
Because it's thinner and flakier and it's got a picture of a coffee
Oh,
cup
okay.
on the front, but it doesn't taste of coffee, even though it's called
Right.
morning coffee.
Okay,
Because
so I'd probably
not
avoided that as
everything,
well, then.
so not everything that has to taste how it is named.
Okay, I will bear that in mind for the future.
This is a Fitch
damn.
level brain melt. Absolutely, Dan. Absolutely. Sharon, you've never heard of morning coffee. What the fuck am I married to? Sharon, it's never too late. Just get yourself a solicitor. Get them forms filled in and rid
It's just a
yourself.
biscuit.
He's holding you back, Sharon. This man is holding you back.
For goodness
You're
sake.
better than this.
Well, we all know that. Doesn't need spelling out to her. She's fully aware. Steve-O. We'll move on, shall we? Steve-O at
Yes.
Elite FPL _ Steve-O on Twitter. And he says, what a topic. I'll start with WWE or just wrestling in general. I just cannot suspend my disbelief anymore. It has nothing to do with age. I still buy into a lot of things that happened in the past despite knowing the truth. As Sai states a million times, if your finishing maneuver is used 100 times and the opponent still kicks out, why should I believe it's special? Yes. Well done,
Mention
Steve.
on what Charlie thinks this week, so go and check that out.
Yeah, there we go. We had a bit no, it's the Shawn Michaels episode, isn't it, where we have a bit of a thing about super kicks. Yeah, I might go off on a little bit of a rant about that. Anyway. Certain aspects, Steve continues, over the past few years, I have enjoyed, i.e. The Rock's return and Punk in AEW. Overall, I do not care for the business. It's fair enough.
Yeah, and maybe that's why you love chain wrestling so much, because we don't generally cover current stuff. We normally go back in time when wrestling was equally as shit, but we just didn't know the ins and outs of the business. Yeah. That as well.
Steve-O continues. There have been hundreds of podcasts I've been a fan of, but can't listen to anymore. 99 times out of 100, it's down to the fact that the podder, I've not heard that term before. Podder.
Someone who creates a podcaster. Yeah, makes sense.
I thought that was a podcaster. Pod,
It
yeah,
could
I
be
like that. Podder.
I like
So-
Podder.
We're a pair of podders.
Well, we are. I mean, that goes without saying.
It's fun to say as well. Podder, 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 podder. It's 99% sake. 99 times out of 100, it's down to the fact that Podder has lost interest and sound like they're boring themselves. Or
Mhm.
they've gone so far down the monetizing aspect, it's
Yes.
more about the ads than the content.
Yes, Conrad Thompson, we're looking at you.
Oh, yes, without a doubt. Without a
I
doubt.
agree with that. I agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. If people want to send us money, we have got to buy us a coffee thing and a merch store. By all means, send us money. We're not going to change.
But we don't do this for the money, because if we did, we'd be fucked. This
yes, we
is
would.
for the love, and it's not a business to us. Whereas for the likes of Conrad and a lot of these other bigger podcasters, it has become a business, and you can see that they do lose that passion in terms of that wanting to create more money rather than create good content.
Yeah, the Bischoff one I was a huge fan of when it first started. And obviously the Bruce Pritchard one I was a huge fan of as well. But you listen back to those early episodes, say the first 50, they're so different to what they're putting out now. I was surprised the other day, I went on Spotify, it comes up like your suggested listens for stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it came up with the Bruce Pritchard podcast. And it said they're up to like episode 490 something. That number is not accurate. I'm just plucking a number out of my head. Yeah, but
it is a ridiculous
holy
number.
crap. Yeah, holy shit. Is that how many they've done? I must have stopped listening years ago then for that to have happened. So I went back and had a little look, and it was literally years ago I stopped listening to them, which is a real shame because it was one of my favourites,
Yeah, but it became a something to shill rather than about the intricacies of wrestling. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Steve-O continues. I used to have an addiction to FPL content. It got to the point where I was listening or watching 2 to 3 pieces of FPL content a day. I made the decision 2 years ago to pretty much stop and only consume at FPL_juice. Other than it sporadically tuning in occasionally other than that, I'm only sporadically tuning in occasionally to others.
Mm-hmm.
See, I don't know if that's okay. For the nature of the topic, the wrestling topic, Steve was obviously saying that they've gone bad, so he doesn't want to listen to them anymore, which is fine. But I don't think there's any issue with having something you're massively invested in. I mean, I would listen to wrestling podcasts or even Doctor Who podcasts all day at work in my previous roles where I could have my earphones on.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, but then I also get Steve-O's point. Like using myself for an example, I would listen to podcasts on a plethora of topics, and it would be on all day, literally as the soundtrack to my day.
Yeah.
But since I have kind of come away from listening to podcasts, I look back and think, Jesus wept, you listen to a lot of trap, some great stuff, but a lot of trap. So I can get his point that it becomes overkill when you're listening to so much stuff going over a very, I mean, it is a niche topic. Let's not forget FPL to be consuming so much content that you can become almost immune to it, I suppose, or bored of it.
Yeah.
That cutting back and focusing on one or two of the content creators that you really, really do like, it can really help you focus on the content that you are invested in rather than just listening to anything because it's about the subject that you're interested in, I suppose.
Yeah. When it comes to FPL content, I only listen or watch Steve-O anyway. I don't check out anyone else.
Steve-O and Jamie.
I don't really understand what's going on sometimes, to be fair. We've got our own little mini league, haven't we, where people have been chucking teams in and so on.
Have we?
I'm fairly certain. Yeah, so you were told about it, not bad.
I know. I'm like Steve-O, I made a conscious decision a couple of seasons ago to not do FPL because I'll start it with all the passion in the world, and then about 4 or 5 weeks in, I'll forget about it. And then nothing will happen, and I won't change my team, and I'll probably finish mid to lower table because I didn't give a shit about it anymore. So why waste my time for those first 4 weeks when I can see other people enjoying it and talking about it, but I don't have to get involved?
I'm fairly certain all of my daughters are above me in the league at the moment.
Shock.
Yeah, it's not a good look. It's not a good look. Steve-O continues. This is a hard one, but Mags gets it. He. Sadly, Ricky Gervais. Don't get me wrong, he has a huge impact on me. But the past several years, he's beyond a parody of himself. His stand-ups these days are atrocious, and his ego is too big for even him to handle. Now, I can actually go along with this, Steve-O. I can actually go along with this because I like Ricky Gervais. The Office was when I first sort of found out who the guy was. I liked Extras as well. I wasn't so fond of the one with the fella who hosts Tenable in it. Is it Life's Too Short?
Okay. I mean,
But
it was okay. It wasn't a brilliant show.
But
It was
this
fun
is
when he fell
bizarre.
out of his car.
Well, yeah, we spoke about it on the show before, haven't we? I've just got to be really careful how I word this so we don't get cancelled. But it's what's the correct term? Little person?
Yeah, is it? Yeah.
Okay, I guess if it's not, I apologise. Pardon my ignorance. I'll leave it there. It's just not my cup of tea, shall we say?
Okay.
But his stand-ups, he did. There was 3 of them, weren't there? Like Fame, Science, and then something else. I can't remember what the third one
Humanity.
was. Yeah, okay. And I enjoyed all of them. And they were actually re-shown the other day on one of the Sky channels. And I watched them again. I really enjoyed it. And the new one that came out, yeah, I put that on and I lasted about 15 minutes before I had to turn it off. And I thought it was a real shame.
The problem with Ricky Gervais is he thinks he's become this kind of champion of social justice in Hollywood.
Okay.
When he's exactly the same. He gets big paychecks for doing very. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's an easy job for him. But he points out the flaws in the characters of like famous people when they pretend to be invested in a certain social problem just because it keeps them in the news. He does the same thing. He does exactly the same thing. So he's become everything that he is complaining about. And I find that a lot of his comedy has, over the last few years, certainly has been very, very samey. Like, you could take jokes from one of his Netflix specials and put it into one of the other Netflix specials, and it wouldn't look out of place. He kind of is on the similar topics all the time. So I agree with him. He has become a parody of himself. But he did give us The Office, which is absolutely still amazing
Fantastic.
to this very day.
Fantastic. Yeah. Steve-O continues. A dark one, but putting women I like on a pedestal. Ironically, I think I've damaged relationships with women I've been involved with, or they've pulled away from me. It's taken me a long time to realise, and it's hard when emotions are involved too, just to treat them as equals. See, that's good. Okay, obviously that's a negative for Steve-O because of how it's influenced his life and he's had to change, and well done, Steve-O, for changing. But putting women on a pedestal and almost sabotaging relationships that way is still better than the other end of the spectrum where...
Which has been a prick.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a positive to come from that, Steve-O. You need to think about it as well, I think. But yeah, equals all round. Yeah, totally, mate. I get where you're coming from.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think putting your partner on a pedestal isn't inherently a bad thing. I absolutely, for all the grief that I give her on this show and probably in real life, I adore Mrs. Maggs. I think she's the best thing that's ever happened to me. And I would happily put her on that pedestal. I think it gets toxic when you can't see past that when that person becomes so enamored with them that they become almost untouchable to you, and you kind of you don't think you're good enough for them, and you doubt yourself, and I think that is where it can get destructive. So finding that fine balance of treating them exactly as an equal, as a person, as a human being, but also not so much worshipping them, but treating them as someone who you want to spend the rest of your life with, as someone who you love and adore. I think you've got to find that balance, and sometimes it's hard to do that. And I hope Steve-O is able to get himself in that position and get himself someone who he feels he can spend the rest of his life with. And if not, we love you anyway, Steve-O, so you've always got us.
Go. Another dark one. Steve-O continues.
Brilliant.
I had a disgraceful addiction to porn, which I'm still trying to move away from now. I hate it. Not only do I realise the negative effects it's had on me, but also the horrific effects it has on billions of others. Yeah, I don't think there's anything you can add to that, Magsy, is it? He's pretty spot on there, isn't he?
I mean, I think that's why he's got such huge muscles, because he alternated like day to day. Rather than being a one-armed wonky popper, he's got muscles. Anyway, I agree with him. Porn, whilst it has its uses, it puts such a negative stereotype onto relationships and women in general that it can sometimes ruin the way that men and women, I suppose, look at each other, and kind of put sex and love way out of the boundaries that it just a normal healthy relationship just seems so bizarre when you're comparing it to the absolutely stunning women and men who star in porn, but also in the situations that they're in, where it's just not reality, and some people kind of think that it is, and it ruins the way that they appreciate their partners. So yeah, I can understand that.
And Steve-O says here, this is the last one, or I'll be writing a book. Social media. I genuinely thought up until 2014-15 it was a brilliant way to share and comment on things you loved.
Yeah.
Now it's become a cesspool of narcissistic, egotistical people, and all about people making money through AdSense. People are now more concerned over their social media consuming than connecting in real life. I thought it was incredible hearing Charlie say she doesn't have any social media, and I truly hope she stays that way. Stays away, sorry. It's legitimately destroying people. Yeah. I mean, I'm on board with that. I mean, Facebook, I've got a Facebook account. I do use it. I do go on there. But the amount I'm on there or whatever is so, because I've noticed myself a massive shift in what it is now. There's so many, everything's an advert, everything, and the Facebook side of things is great for like the Facebook memories, and it's almost like, I had stuff come up this morning saying 15 years ago this happened with the football club and me and Sharon, or 12 years ago Charlie was doing this and Liv was whatever. That is fantastic. And relatives sharing pictures of the kids and so on. Thank you, my love. Cheers. My wife just bringing me a cup of tea. And relatives sharing pictures of the kids or all that sort of stuff. Absolutely fantastic. Great stuff. But it's such hard work now. It really is. I've got the pages for the shows, and to be fair, I don't upkeep them anywhere near as well as I should, just because I'm kind of sick of it.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think I'll always look at social media as a double-edged sword. In one hand, it has made the world closer. It's made people have the ability to have friendships and relationships that they perhaps wouldn't have. I mean, for example, we wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for the power of social media. But on the other side, it's given a voice to some of the most despicable, ridiculous, horrific people in the world. As Steve-O said, there's so many narcissists, people with huge egos, just horrible people who should be banished to the eternal hell, have a voice and a platform where they can spout ridiculous, horrific things. And I totally agree with him that it was heartwarming to hear Charlie say that she doesn't have a social media presence, and I echo his words about her staying away, because if she ends up on social media, the one thing it does, it strips people of their innocence. You are bombarded with some of the most horrific things, especially on X now, with Elon Twatty Musk in charge, and no kind of guardrails in place anymore since he sacked 95% of his staff. Some of the stuff that you get thrown at you on Twitter is horrific, absolutely horrific. So yeah, stay away, Charlie, from social media. It is way better to be away from it than it is to be on it.
Bring back MySpace. That's what I say. MySpace was great. You could pick your own little entrance music, everything, mate. It was fantastic.
It was.
We have Dan Griffin at DanGriffin21 on Twitter. He says, hi, Pix. You made me jump then. The cat jumping up next to me, that scared the shit out of me, that did. Dan says, most recently, AEW. All In was the nail in the coffin for me. Not that I hated it. The show was fine. It's just not for me anymore. Used to watch Dynamite weekly, but I just don't care anymore. Going from TNA Emergence to that felt like going from looking at a Van Gogh painting to an AI art.
Mm-hmm.
And to continue the wrestling theme, Dan says, watching Raw and SmackDown. The move to TNT Sports in the UK and the Discovery Plus app being garbage totally killed my interest. Maybe the move to Netflix will bring me back.
Yep, I mean, the Raw and SmackDown thing, can't relate because I don't watch the weekly product. I am more than happy in my little wrestling bubble of watching pay-per-views and the stuff that you see on clips on YouTube and stuff like that. I agree with him with AEW. I think the wrestling world were so happy when AEW came along, because it was something new, something different. And for the first few years, it was fresh and it was exciting. But it soon went the way of WCW, and it still seems to be going the way of WCW, where we're getting new signings for that cheap pop and storylines that go nowhere, and seeing the same wrestlers on TV again and again and again, and building new young talents only for them to be sat in the back and not doing anything. And yeah, I think the one thing Tony needs is to get some bookers in, to get somebody to write the story. I mean, the guy is trying to write, 7 hours of wrestling a week, plus the 5 pay-per-views that they said that they would stick to, but yet they've already had like 9 pay-per-views this year. Yeah, I mean, AEW when it first came out was brilliant. Now it's very much skippable TV.
I said to Sharon earlier, a good thing they could do to help kickstart AEW and probably bring some ratings in because of the way it would be structured. Did you see John Moxley talking to Tony Schiavone this week? Okay. He started the show, come down to Tony Schiavone, cut a promo, and then called out Darby Allin. So straight away I'm thinking, for crying out fucking loud, we're still doing that nonsense, are we? Then he goes to leave the ring. He gets back in the ring, walks up to Tony Schiavone, and then in a different tone of voice, different attitude, almost, I don't want to say out of character, but a totally different volume or feeling to what he's saying. He said, oh yeah, this isn't your show anymore. Remember that. This isn't your company anymore. And then walked off. So what I was saying to Sharon earlier is, with the whole Shane McMahon rumours and so on, would it be kind of cool if the likes of Cesaro, Daniel Bryan, and all the other ex-WWE guys got together in this little faction? Shane McMahon could be their focal point and so on, and have a real invasion angle done with the hindsight and how the invasion angle in WWF and WCW went and fell apart. You could book that. That would be interesting. And at the same time, you got Kenny Omega coming back soon, who I'm quite a big fan of, to be fair. And you could have him for a little while hanging around in the rafters and not speaking, and he could paint his face black and white, and just go from there and see what happens.
So rehash old ground, essentially.
Yeah, just bring back the NWO is all I want, really.
Yeah, perfect.
Kenny Omega as Sting. Millwall Chris, he said, at Millwall Chris 1 on Twitter, he says, oh my God, my children.
Yep. The pricks, aren't they? Aren't kids pricks?
Great when they were kids. Now they're 18 and 21. They're just a pain in the arse.
Yeah, they are. Adult kids are knobs.
It's like the older and developed, it's like they got older and developed their own thoughts and opinions instead of just listening to mine, Chris says.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. When the worst thing that kids do is learn to talk, because once they learn to talk, they learn to talk back.
Yeah, there you go. And finally, just literally as we went live this evening, we had Rob at UTC Rob on Twitter, and he says, Muller Rice, just bought a 6-pack, got home, and the best before date is today. Completely my fault. I'll be back on the Muller Rice train next time I go shopping.
How did you just buy one today and the best before date is today? That's take it back material.
Yeah, you gotta be sticking your hands at the back of the fridge, Mags, aren't you? And getting the fresher ones, aren't you?
I mean, everybody does that for the milk, surely. You always look
100%. And the bread.
Check the dates, yeah. So it is a schoolboy error there, Rob. But still, I'd be fuming if I got a 6-pack of Muller Rice and it said you have to eat them all today. But then Dan does give a little bit of context. He says, that's what Rob gets for shopping in the reduced section, the tart bastard. Yeah, I mean, Rob, if the product has grown its own set of legs and is trying to escape the store, it's probably not going to be the best of quality, sir.
No, there we go. Magsy, unless I have missed any, that is all from the interwebs that we have this week. Do you have any?
I think that's. I mean, we kind of touched on ours before we started with the good folks from the CWF. It's TV shows that I have a massive love for, the likes of Bullseye, the likes of Big Break, those kind of entertainment shows. And then when they come back, I mean, for instance, Catchphrase with that knobhead Stephen Mulhern and not fucking Roy Walker. Dave Sparker as the host of Bullseye. It's those kind of things. The live TV programs, or not live, but live action TV programs that just don't age well or age like fucking sour milk. I can't stand them. And especially when you get channels like Dave and is it Great TV or whatever that just replay them over and over again, and you think this. I used to love this. I used to sit there as a kid on a Sunday evening watching this and thinking it was brilliant. And you watch it now and you think, oh God, what a fucking horrific program this is. When you're answering a question for £10 and when you're willing to gamble £12 and you don't know whether to because you've had a good day and you sat there and you're having a pint and a fag whilst Jim Bowen's reading fucking questions about Bollea. It's horrific programming, isn't it? The shit we used to love that you look back and think that's horrific TV.
Mine really stands out, to be fair, over the last couple of days, and it's football punditry.
Oof, Jermaine Gene, what a knobhead!
But what all the people they have doing the punditry, shall we say? I can remember being a kid, and obviously the footage of the match on Match of the Day was obviously, I used to love watching Match of the Day every Saturday night and so when I was younger. But one of the most important things to me was listening to Alan Hansen and some of these other pundits talk through why this happened, why that happened. And as a young kid, I felt I was learning from these people who have been successful in the game themselves as players, managers, whatever. And then I look at football punditry now, and it seems if you spent 45 minutes in the Premier League, you're going to get a fucking job somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of nonsense spoken by these people, just absolute downright bullshit that comes out of these people's mouths. I mean, Jermaine Genius is one of the worst. He's just he's just crap at his job. I can't stand the guy. And then, of course, now he's got done for being a bit of a naughty lad, hasn't he? So he's gone, thankfully. So then I turn the TV on, and you got Daniel Sturridge stood there with fucking earrings and chains and these fucking trainers on. He looks like a backing dancer for JLS. It's fucking ridiculous. And he's talking like, oh, bro and bruv and this vibe and that vibe and if you don't know, it's Mo. Oh, get to fuck, mate. You're on television. You'll have young children learning about the game from what they're talking about. And you've got an idiot like that. And it's not just him. There's numerous others as well.
Robbie Savage, Chris Sutton, Danny Mills.
Yeah, all of these, absolute nonsense. You do get some that are still okay.
Gary
I
Neville.
think Roy Keane. Gary Neville's okay, yeah. I think Roy Keane at times can be okay. Jamie Carragher I'll tell you what, Carragher at times can be okay. But in recent weeks, he's pissed me off. Now, I know the thing is that a couple of years ago, they had the Monday Night Football and the conversations between Carragher and Neville were brilliant. And they go back and forth and they might disagree on something and go back and forth for their points. And it was great television. In the last, specifically this weekend, obviously you had Liverpool beating United quite handsomely, and everyone's talked about how shite United were and the issues we've had and so on. And that's been going on for years, and they're completely right. I do think it's a little unfair how that has been the topic of conversation and not how good Liverpool were as well, mind. Because Liverpool were very good. And I think that's been kind of overlooked a little bit with how shite we were. But anyway, you then got Gary Neville talking and trying to make some points. And I'm interested in what he has to say, whether I agree with him or not, whatever. Jamie Carragher then just talks over the top of him and interrupts him. And he's just so argumentative. And to be honest, just fucking ignorant and rude. And it's almost like they had this thing a little while back where they'd have these conversations back and forth that were great television, and they would disagree and maybe clash a little bit, but go back and forth and so on. But Carragher now, he's just fucking rude and ignorant. He won't let Neville finish a point. And whenever Neville tries to make a point, he would then turn around and be like, well, hang on, what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And you think it's okay to finish 8th, do you? And Neville's like, well, I didn't say that. What I meant was... And then he jumped back in and go, well, hang on, you said it was okay to finish 8th. And he's like, well, no, I didn't. And it just ruins the whole viewing experience for me. Yeah. And I just think if Carragher can't go back to being not a great pundit, but he was a decent pundit, then just shut the fuck up and get off my television.
Yeah. I mean...
He just acted like an absolute twat.
I would happily see... the likes of Mark Lawrenson,
yes,
Jimmy Hill, Alan Hansen.
You might struggle with him.
No. but that kind of old school footballer who was really good at analysing football. Alan Hansen was brilliant at it. Graham Souness is really, really good at it. Yes. Even though sometimes he can be almost too negative. But now it's almost seen as you have to have a character. Ironically, Jermaine Genius has had the character of sour milk. But yeah, I'm not a massive fan of the modern day pundits. Outside of a couple, I think Rio Ferdinand is probably the standout one. I do like the way he speaks when he's analytical about football, but all the rest can just get straight in the bin for me.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I just think Carragher really just annoyed me. I was trying to listen to the points Neville were making. I don't agree with everything he says, but I still want to listen. But he was literally leaning across and doing this at him and literally shouting and so. It's just like, my God, just fuck off, mate. And let's not forget, there was also that occasion he spat at a child, so he's obviously a cunt. So there we go. Magsy, shall we scan through the chat quickly and see what we have there?
We shall. So we'll go all the way back to this. Dan Griffin said, should have been watching TNA in the pandemic era. They were putting on the best shows then, and they still are. Yeah, TNA is again, we've mentioned multiple times that they're the little engine that could, and you can't kill that company. They're doing some of the best work of their lives. Do you know JBL even turned up in TNA this past week? They're just doing absolute numbers. Dan then says he should get paid for his TNA shilling. Absolutely, and it would be well worth it. Dan then says to Graham, podcasts affinity for Graham's affinity for listening and watching stuff at multiple speeds is confusing, concerning, and a little bit scary. Fun fact: one time Dan and Rob tried to outfox me by recording releasing their section of their podcast at times 10, knowing that I listened at times 5, so it would end up being times 50.
Fucking hell.
Which is that was 50, hard.
Yeah. Maths let me down then.
You put 15 at times 15.
I did. I was like, my word, that's bad enough.
Graham says he just has 4 minutes left and at times 2, then back to times 1. Ugh. Sorry, Graham, but maybe next time hang back a little bit, and then you've got a little bit more time at times 2. And then he says, and at that moment, I'm back to times 1, and you just finished talking about changing your speeds. Comedy shows he'll watch at times 2 on DVD, as comedic timing gets lost otherwise. Oh, so he'll watch them at a double speed just because he doesn't lose that comedic timing. Brilliant.
What about the rest of his family, though, when he puts something on television? Are they just sat there like with their heads hurting, going, Dad, stop it, I don't get it?
Mrs. Maggs used to say to me all the time, that must fuck about with your brain, listening to something so fast. And yeah, I've become normal out of it, didn't I? So nothing definitely went wrong with my brain. So yeah, I totally agree. Dan says Aldi dark chocolate is surprisingly delicious. Yeah, do you know it is? Aldi are amazing for their kind of home brand stuff. It's genuinely top drawer stuff. So I'm a big proponent of Aldi. Sharon says, because you hate Galaxy, that's her buying Galaxy all the time now, because she doesn't want to share.
No, that's fair enough.
Graham says, SARS facial expressions on listening to Mag describe his biscuity Yorkshire tea. Sharon then swears by saying tea and biscuits is rank. But then she makes it up by saying that she's married to an idiot, which we all wholeheartedly agree on. Dan says Biscoff cheesecake is elite, as are the Biscoff Krispy Kremes, but they're fucking pricey. Them it's like £4 for a donut. But
I'd never had one before. Before we went on holiday, and there was one of those little huts there selling the Krispy Kremes and that, and the kids wanted a drink. So we went out and I said, "Oh, I'll get you all a donut as well." So it was one for me, one for Shah, one for Liv, one for Charlie. Right, and then
Sarah pulling coins out, and then she said, "That'll be £30." Then
and then like, a bottle of Sprite each or whatever. Yeah, and she literally went, "Oh, that'd be like 27 quid," and I was like, "You what?" I mean, don't get me wrong, really nice, but fucking hell, have a word.
They are very, very pricey. Then we've got Sharon. We've saying, what about biscuit spread? This is brilliant. I'll have some nice coffee in my sandwich. Dan says this is Fitch level bray milk. Correct. Graham says it could be worse. Sar could have thought Biscoff was cough mixture flavored. Sharon, what the fuck am I married to? Told you, Sharon. Get down your local solicitors. You will have all rights to divorce this man. Dan then says to Graham he thinks that cough syrup is coffee flavour. Brilliant. What a pair of podders.
Odders.
Graham says, I've heard podcasts asking for donations for like a coffee, but you guys should be asking for a Biscoffee. Yeah.
Yeah, that works.
Send us packets of Biscoff. And we'll, in fact, next week's episode, Sar's going to pick up a pack of Biscoff and he's going to try them live on the show and see if he likes them.
I will do that. Sharon, make a note of
that. Dan then says, Sar, you're ahead of both Charlie and Liv in the SJP World Media FPL League. I was going to type you're beating 2 out of 3 daughters, but that just sounded wrong.
It's just because the third doesn't live here anymore.
And Graham says, classic Viz. He corrects himself by saying Viz, but he says, classic Viz letter. That Cindy Crawford walkout video is absolutely amazing. 1 week later, and I already have a right arm like Arnold Schwarzenegger. That is objectifying women, Graham, and we won't have that on this show. We are progressive here, so shame on you. Oh, look, your pussy's behind you, sir.
Yeah. Did anyone see her fall down, by the way? Anyone in the chat? She was there, and as we were talking, I turned to stroke her. And I don't know if I made her jump or something, and she literally just fell straight on the floor.
So animal cruelty. Animal cruelty.
It's on camera too.
Dan says AW are the wrestling equivalent of Chelsea FC, which is ironic as Fulham's recruitment has been decent this summer. Yeah, but the problem with AW is their recruitment is brilliant. The wrestlers they bring in are amazing wrestlers, but then 90% of them are sat at catering after the first month or so because the hype's died down and they need another quick fix for the ratings. Anyway, Dan says, I doubt AEW will make an invasion angle work. Tony will blow his wad on dream matches in 3 weeks. Yeah, and I don't think the invasion is a good idea because it would make AEW look second rate compared to WWE.
Oh, yeah.
All these WWE, I don't want to say rejects because a lot of them have seen the contracts out and they've gone to test pastures new, but in the eyes of the typical wrestling fan, these are people who didn't make it in WWE and now are in AEW. So it would kind of look a little bit second rate for me.
Oh yeah, if you've got a lineup of say Edge, John Moxley, Daniel Bryan, and so on, and then across the ring from them you've got fucking Jungle Boy. Yeah, it's going to look a little bit skew-if, isn't it?
Rude. Jungle Boy is good. I mean, he's the scare one.
He's a bitch.
Oh dear. Graham says you don't have to eat them within 24 hours. It's just the best before that day. Best before is not the same as used bar. I mean, normally I would agree, but Muller Rice has milk as one of its main ingredients.
Oh, yeah.
Milk going off. I would prefer not to eat that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Graham. Dan says Martin O'Neill once bollocked a player for passing to Robbie Savage, who was in a position to score because the passer should have known that Robbie is shit. So I don't know if I've mentioned this on this podcast, but I once got into not an argument, but the Mrs. Maggs once fell out with me over Robbie Savage.
Okay.
So there was a game on the PlayStation called LMA Manager. And I had Robbie Savage in my team. And my missus doesn't know Robbie Savage from Adam, but she just saw the graphics and saw that he had long blonde hair. And she thought, oh my God, he looks like he's going to be a brilliant player. And then I sold him. And she found out that I'd sold him and she fell out with me because I sold Robbie Savage in a computer game because she thought it was the best thing ever.
That is brilliant.
Dan Griffin says Jamie Carragher was a moody bitch the whole game yesterday.
Just an absolute fucking melt.
And he says he's given up listening to football punditry and commentary and just decided to be one. So join us for the volley this Saturday at 4:45 for Ireland versus England. Brilliant segue, Dan. And I think you would not look out of place on Match of the Day. Match of the Day 2, maybe you'd probably fit in better. or at least Sky Sports. You'd be brilliant on Sky Sports.
I'll tell you something else whilst we're just on that. Sorry, Maxie, before we dive into anything further, right? When did people stop dressing smart to be on television as well?
It's told you, it's
and all that. It was a shirt, it was whatever, and Des Lynam always had a shirt and a jacket on, right? Now these fuckers don't even wear socks; they're in trainers with straight trousers that don't fit.
I hate when people wear
t-shirt.
shoes with no socks. That's fucking horrific. I don't get it. But I understand what you're getting at. It's almost like they're trying to be style icons rather than football pundits.
Oh, you can allow it a little bit on Sky because they're a bit younger and it's whatever. But like a polo shirt and whatever, okay, trousers and shoes, that's fine. But when you see these people on Match of the Day 2 is the perfect example, and they're wearing trainers, so you're on the BBC, mate. What the fuck are you doing? You're not on Channel fucking 5,
Clouds. Graham is laughing at UTT Rob and Dan trying to trick me with times 50. I don't think he's just laughing. I think he's drooling as well. Content
challenge accepted.
That's amazing. Sharon said, "I'd fall out with. I'm assuming that Sa is back to front. If he had Savage, I hate him. I mean, he's a dick. Savage is a dick. I can't disagree with her. Half-time Biscoff pie at half-time, Dan. I mean, too many half-times in that sentence there, Graham, but that is an idea. Dan then says he would look at a place on Match of the Day. I would take up both pundit chairs. That's not a bad thing. If we get rid of fucking Danny Mills, that's absolutely fine with me. And they'd have to break out the wide-angle lens. I mean, that's just more of you to love, Dan. You and Gary Lineker. You, Gary Lineker, chewing the fat, and then maybe have Matt in the Chris Kamara role where he misses all the action and he's talking about something else. That'd be good. Dan then says to Graham, "I'm considering a doner kebab." Jesus, that sounds like a heart attack, doesn't it? Jesus. And then Graham says he meant to put half-time Park Club for one of those 2 half-times. I understood, but it was just too many half times in one. And then we'll leave it at this is the last comment we're going for. Danny Mills looks like someone drew a frown on a ball sack.
Oh man,
it's funny because it's true.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much, as always, to everybody who has joined us live this evening in the chat. Message the show for our non-wrestling topic, all the interaction and so on. Maxime, I say it all the time. This is your show. Every segment is driven by yourselves. So, if you don't get involved, it don't happen. So well done, you. You make this show happen. Brilliant. And on that note, you vote every week to decide which wrestling match we look at. Magsy won the poll. Shall we talk a little wrestling?
Yes.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Okie doke. Magsy, you won a poll with a match from 1993 WCW, which in theory sounds like it would be my pick.
I was very pleased with myself for this pick. Normally, I do this to just wind you up, but I did think that this was 2 wrestlers who, I think between them, we may have seen twice in the whole span of chain wrestling, and one of them has never, as far as I remember, never been on chain wrestling, and that is an absolute travesty. So
unless he's been in like a Royal Rumble or something, but even then you don't get to spotlight them.
It's never been the focal point of a chain wrestling match review. So I thought it was a hard time we changed that.
Yes, indeed. So we are heading to the opener from WCW, Fall Brawl 1993, from Houston, Texas. And we have Ricky the Dragon Steamboat versus Lord Steven Regal for the WCW television title. Tony Schiavone and Jesse Ventura are your commentators. I like this commentary team because it reminds me of being a kid and watching SummerSlam 89, which was one of the first VHS tapes I ever watched. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
But this whole era of WCW, it's very backyard in it. It's very,
Oh, yeah.
it's very, it's not polished. Let's just say. So this is the opening match of the whole pay-per-view, and Tony Schiavone throws to Eric Bischoff, and then Eric Bischoff is struggling to get through his interview, and he's having his finger in his ear. And then Eric throws to Michael Buffer, who's obviously the voice of the Rumble. And then Michael Buffer doesn't say anything. And Tony Schiavone has to chip in to just fill the noise. It's just so backyardy wrestling.
Yeah.
And it just looks dingy. It just looks so dingy as well.
Yeah. Yeah. WCW, in my opinion, even when it got big, it didn't look dingy anymore when it got big and you had the NWO and all that sort of stuff going on. But you still had those problems. You still had those issues, the production problems, the cameras not being in the right spot, things being missed, all sorts that they've always had within that company, which is a shame. But this era of WCW is right up my street. I love this era, despite the fact it does look dingy and shit and it isn't well produced. And there's a lot of crap as well on some of these cards. The main event is a War Games match. So straight away, massive chunks of the roster are took away. So you look at the rest of this card, there's some real poor matches on this card. But that era in WCW when Flair has gone to the WWF, so we're looking at 91, 92, 93. January 93 he leaves. To then Flair coming back 93 and then in 94, well half of 94. Until Hogan arrives. There's some real brilliant hidden gems for in-ring action in that period, especially early 94, before Hogan arrives and Flair has come back. There are some fantastic wrestling matches in that time, Max.
Okay. I'll take your word for it.
Okay, cool. Steven Regal is brilliant here in his entrance because he has some pyro, and even the pyro makes him look pissed off. Like, why have they given me that? That's a waste of space and all this sort of stuff. Comes down to the ring with his assistant. What was his name?
William.
That's it, William. Yes.
It was Bill Dundee, wasn't it, as well?
Sorry?
William was played by Bill Dundee.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, okay. I didn't know this. Why? Okay. The hard cam is showing plenty of empty seats, and Tony Schiavone has said, "There's lots of people here. This is a sellout. We've had to turn 2,000 away." And I'm thinking, Tony, have you? Have you really?
So talking about the crowd, and it may kind of telegraph how I thought about this match. This crowd were wankers. Absolute quiet, sat on their hands, no attention paying bunch of bastards. I hated this crowd with a passion. I hope they all got syphilis.
Wow. It's a dirty arena in Texas.
Yeah, exactly.
Michael Buffer, as you mentioned, Magsy, is the ring announcer there. He's only there to do the title matches and maybe the War Games match. I'm not sure. Like a lot of expense when you can't even fill your arenas to get people to watch the wrestling. Never mind have a ring announcer like that. But they
say WCW wasted money. I don't believe it.
Indeed. Steamboat is taped up. He has his ribs taped because the previous night on WCW Saturday Night, Steven Regal, who I might at times call William Regal by accident, I apologise if that happens, but Steven Regal attacked him with an umbrella and badly damaged his ribs. So, as daft as it is, and this is a big bugbear of Sharon's, she hates the whole bandage around the waist to protect your ribs. It's stupid, it's pointless. But from a psychology standpoint, to me it does make sense because it gives the heel a target to aim for, and it's constantly putting it out there for the fans. He's got a bad. He's a bit sore there.
I agree with you. Sharon's wrong there.
When you have a match like this, where the babyface Ricky Steamboat is trying to mount comebacks and getting a bit of steam behind him, all it takes is a jab in the bandaged area, and he doubles over, and that's the cutoff for the heel. It works really well for me.
Yeah, I totally agree. And what really makes this match stand out for in terms of that is they keep that up all the way through the match. A lot of matches they'll start with an injury, and then it gets forgotten in the time of the match. But this whole match, the focal point is the ribs, and the ultimate downfall of Steamboat is the fact that he's got these busted up ribs. It's amazing storytelling for me, I think.
Sharon in the chat there is actually spot on with her comment there. She has never said it didn't serve a purpose, but from an actual medical standpoint, with common sense, it doesn't make any sense having a bandage there, and she's right. It doesn't.
Yeah,
it serves no purpose at all.
I take it back saying that she was wrong, but it makes sense in the terms of aesthetics, like you said. It gives it reminds the fans that this is a weak point on this wrestler. It also kind of reminds the wrestler as well that they're meant to be playing up with these injuries.
Tony Schiavone as well on commentary, talking to Jesse Ventura, says, some wrestlers are really smart and try and hide their injuries. So if somebody's got a right hand that is injured, they might tape the left hand so their opponent goes after their good hand rather than their bad hand. And I'm sat there thinking, Tony, you're talking complete bollocks. That has never happened in the history of anything ever. And
also, if that was the case, if that person injured your other hand, you'd then fight with two injured hands.
Yeah, exactly. Just yeah, you just can't do anything. My strong hand. The match begins in a bit of a brawl, which I like because Steamboat is angry. Steamboat has been attacked the night before,
and how often do you see the face doing that? I mean, Steamboat's clearly the face in this, but he's so pissed off about the ribs and that he's the one that initiates this brawl straight from the bell, but it doesn't go particularly well for him because of the injured ribs.
I'll tell you what, that is actually something that bothered me about NXT when I watched it earlier today. Okay. There's a trio of guys who were a team, and somebody is the X Division champion from TNA, and they split up. And is it Wesley, something like that?
Yeah, and Zachary Wentz.
Right, okay. And they're supposed to be having this huge feud, and they used to be friends and brothers, and they're really angry at each other. And then the bell rings, and I'm thinking, go on then, just go at him, But they don't. They go into the, I suppose, indie-esque, maybe kind of Will Ospreay, Ricochet-esque dance routine
of counter wrestling.
Yeah, and I just didn't, straight from the off. They won me back. The match was very good, and by the end they'd hooked me back in, Magsy. But that opening moment, I was like, that just makes no fucking sense.
Mm-hmm. Before we get back into this wrestling match, did you know that this was the first WCW event where they were broken away from the NWA?
First, they've broken away from the NWA.
Yeah,
right. I didn't know the specifics, but I knew it was this time, wasn't it? Because that's when they created the international title and then the WCW world title, wasn't it?
And the reason why the NWA essentially pulled out was because WCW had already taped this show months in advance, and people knew the result. And
right. Yep.
So the NWA were not impressed with the fact that big storylines were being given away months in advance, and so they pulled out from WCW.
Well done, WCW. Well done.
Exactly.
Steven Regal gets sent over the top rope early on as well, and lands on that entrance ramp, which is a platform all the way down to the ring, isn't it? It's quite. I quite like that.
Yeah, but the commentary team have to basically jump through hoops to explain why he wasn't an instant disqualification because this is the era where going over the top rope means you get disqualified. And they said if he'd have touched the floor at ringside, it would have been a disqualification. And I think Steamboat quickly realizes, I'm kind of breaking kayfabe here, goes out and throws him straight back into the ring. It's it kind of made no sense to do it.
Steamboat then joins his opponent back in the ring by coming off the top rope with one of those patented Steamboat flying chops that I think he always looks pretty spectacular doing. Before Regal tries to take control again, despite the fact he's took this bump to the outside, this chop, and he's been punched in the face and so on. One quick jab to the ribs, the heel is back in control, the baby face is back in peril. It makes sense, Magsy.
Yeah.
There's
Absolutely.
no 87 backflips. He's not picking his opponent up and dropping him on his head 17 times. It's really simple storytelling with a device of the bad ribs, and it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally 100% agree. And it happens multiple times in the match where Steamboat has got the momentum and it's one strike to the ribs, or I think there's even a point where Regal elbows Steamboat in the face, which stretches his rib cage, and that effect loses Steamboat the momentum. It's amazing storytelling, and that's good, but you have to match it with really good wrestling, and these two knock it out of the park for me. It's just, this is the kind of wrestling that I absolutely love. I don't mind the flippy stuff, but the technical mat-based wrestling where you are trying to one-up your opponent, that is just my wheelhouse all day long. And some of the maneuvers that happen in this match, I very rarely, if ever, have seen before. I mean, there's a move where Steamboat almost does a sunset flip hammerlock and traps Steven Regal on the floor. Absolutely brilliant. There's a point where he's got the armbar hammerlock locked into Steven Regal. Regal is able to power up and pick Ricky Steamboat up, and Steamboat is then still able to keep hold of that armbar and flip Steven Regal back into the ground. It's just amazing. There's some absolutely outstanding technical wrestling in this match. It's mind-blowing. Really, just, I watched it slack-jawed. It was that good, just that innovative.
See, I'm going to add to that as well. Now, I don't know the right or wrong way of doing this, but there's different opinions on structuring a wrestling event, a 4-hour pay-per-view, 3-hour pay-per-view, whatever. The old school mentality from hearing interviews, reading books, understanding it how I do, is that your main event is your be-all and end-all.
Mm-hmm.
That those guys need to be showcased. That's why people are coming to the arena. You used to get wrestlers thanking the champion for the house because he would draw the crowd in and all that stuff. So the undercard would need to do certain things. Everyone would need to work together. It wouldn't be a case of this is my match and that's that. You would need to work with the rest of the show. So you couldn't have a guy in the opener going through a table if there was a table spot in the main event or the semi-main event, because it takes away from it. You wouldn't want guys in the second match bleeding a gusher if there's blood in the later matches, because it'll take away from that. And I think these guys here, they understand the assignment in front of them so well. It's the opener for the pay-per-view. They go just over a quarter of an hour, whatever it was, 16, 17 minutes, whatever. They very rarely go outside the ring, because that's going to be saved for later matches.
Mm-hmm.
There's no real weapons used apart from the finish. It's wrestling, and you've got a baby face who is a brilliant, one of the best sellers in the business, one of the best baby faces for that aspect the business has ever seen in Ricky Steamboat. You've got a technically gifted guy in Regal who understands the business and how to structure a match. I think they really understood their assignment here. They've made their match as good as it possibly can be without doing things that are going to potentially hamper or water down what happens later in the card. And we come back to AEW with that for me. I feel sometimes when you're watching an AEW pay-per-view, every match has somebody kicking out of a finish 3 or 4 times. Every match has chair shots. Every match has blood. Every match has this. Every match they get tables and ladders out. And I know we call it a super indie, which it is, Maxie, the phrase that you've used spot on there. But I look at it and I think, you've got your agents there. Well, you did have, of course. Most of them are quit now because people like the Bucks and Jungle Boy don't want to listen to them. But you've got your agents there saying, well, they're doing that in a later match, so why don't we do this instead? That's how things should work. And that's why you get great wrestling shows rather than great wrestling matches. And I think that really hinders some of the modern product, you know?
Yeah, I totally agree with pretty much every word you said then. What I would add is this, to me, felt like Regal and Steamboat were given a set of parameters. Like you said, you go 15 minutes, don't do this kind of spot. We're saving that for later in the match, but have at it. And these two have come up with a match that blows everything else out of the water. And it's phenomenal when you just let two talented technical wrestlers go at it, and they come up with gold, absolute gold. And I've never watched this match before, but this is going to be the kind of match that I visit time and time again, just for how innovative, how spectacular, how technical this wrestling match actually is.
Don't bother playing the rest of the pay-per-view, though, mate.
Nah,
it's not.
nah.
I mean, Flair versus Rick Rude's not bad, but yeah, I wouldn't be too concerned.
I mean, the Shockmaster has comedy value, I suppose.
Okay. You mentioned as well the hammerlock and the arm being targeted by Steamboat. That again adds another aspect to the story. So Steamboat has a target on his opponent, the same way Regal has an opponent on him, and that stems from Regal running into a turnbuckle, hurting his arm, and the guy has picked up an injury during the match. So his opponent, who is trying to win the wrestling match, because let's remember, it's a wrestling match, it's a contest, you're trying to win. It's not about gymnastics and showing off your backflips. It makes perfect sense for him to use that has happened in the contest to his advantage. Look at that, Max. Isn't it simple? Isn't it really straightforward?
Yep, it is. You get a focal point, in this case, the ribs. You tell a story and you let the wrestlers do what they are good at. And it's art. It's art. Absolutely.
Yeah, it is indeed.
Beautiful.
I like the way as well, you said about the crowd being shit. There were moments when they got the crowd into it. Not as you would expect, not a big roaring crowd, etc., because of course, Tony Schiavone said they've turned 2,000 away, which probably explains all the empty seats. But you've got the match speeds up at times with again the babyface being in control. Ricky Steamboat, when he is in control, or building a comeback, the speed picks up. The match quickens, so the crowd get into it. They get excited. When the heel is in charge, they slow it right down, so that the fans watching aren't enjoying it as much, and they're rooting for the babyface to come back. Now, you can have a bad guy capable of doing a moonsault or being a fantastic performer in the ring, but you don't want them to then start getting cheers because they're so good in the ring and overshadowing your babyface. And again, it comes back to psychology and how you put matches together. So having the babyface here, Steamboat, his offense being quicker and more exciting, there's no danger of the fans then starting to back Regal because he's a good wrestler. Which
is right, but there is a point where you can clearly hear the fans saying that Steamboat sucks, which I mean, that is quite early in the match, and he definitely does not suck. But how ridiculous that the crowd were doing that. But he does, like you said, he does end up winning the crowd round. And when he does quicken the pace and he's got the momentum going, the crowd do start to get invested. But the majority of the match, they are sat on their hands and they are going for piss breaks and they are empty seats, and it just annoyed the fuck out of me because this is the kind of match that I would have given my teeth to be in the crowd to watch. And these people have got this gold in front of them and they're absolutely shitting on it. It's just absolutely annoying.
Again, we come back to the build-up. The pace is quickening. The baby face. I mean, the Steamboat hits across body, goes back to working Regal's arm with certain moves. We get some pretty spectacular spots as well. There's a tombstone involved and an electric chair.
Regal does a somersault senton bomb.
Yes,
I didn't know that he had that fucker in his arsenal.
And then when it's building up, and obviously the heel has had his ass kicked for 90 seconds, 2 minutes, whatever. There is no instant switch where then the heel is full of energy and it's his turn, like we might see in modern wrestling now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He jabs the ribs again. Instantly, Steamboat collapses, and that gives him time to gather himself. The pace then drops back down, and they start building back up again towards Steamboat's next comeback, which Regal will then cut off again. And again,
which makes sense. That's what would happen in real life. If you were getting beat up and you got a shot in, you wouldn't then suddenly have a burst of energy and start doing all your offensive moves. You wouldn't take that time to have a breath and get some air back into your lungs and get some blood back into your muscles. So it absolutely makes sense.
But again, we see in modern day wrestling, it's almost like, okay, it's your turn now. You get your shit in. Okay, it's my turn now. I'll get my shit in. And even things like somebody could have been working over the knee for 10 minutes. When it's their turn, the limp disappears. And they're running up the ropes and doing a backflip, or they're running this way and that way to do a dive. It just takes away. I suppose it comes back to what Steve-O was saying in our non-wrestling topic. It takes away from that believability. We all know how wrestling works. We know how wrestling is predetermined and it's structured, etc., etc. We understand all that. Of course, we're not children and whatever. But at the same time, don't insult my intelligence. Don't tell me this guy's got a bad leg and then he's climbing up the ring ropes to do a somersault and all this sort of stuff. It makes no sense. So this here, again, as simple as it is, just for a punch to the ribs and then Regal looking a bit tired for 30 seconds, it just adds to the story and it makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm fully on board with you, and I don't like how that sounds that I agree with you. But I do.
A stuck clock tells the right time at least twice a day, mate. Steamboat, again, every now and again, will go back to the arm, which, again, great storytelling. Steamboat gets thrown to the outside as well. When he comes back into the ring...
It doesn't stay outside for long. He's literally in and out like within seconds. Brilliant.
Yes. There's a moment that, again, the simplicity of it is probably what makes it so wonderful. Regal has Steamboat kind of bent over to the side, almost like in an abdominal stretch position, but without the hold actually being applied, and then puts the point of his elbow into his ribs, into his side, and just grinds it. Now, anyone who's got siblings or cousins or even just friends at school when they were growing up, you can imagine how that feels. Watching wrestling growing up, you can't imagine how a body slam feels. You can't imagine how a clothesline off the top rope feels. But stuff like that, everyone's had a noogie on the top of their head. Everyone's had an elbow draped across that, whatever. Again, it's reaching out to the people at home and really hooking them in with things that they will understand.
And then another little subtle point, which absolutely makes sense. A few minutes later, Regal knows that they've probably got as much out of the bandage as they could, but to elevate it, he rips the bandage off as if the bandage was somehow protecting Steamboat a little bit. Now he's taking that bandage off. There's no protection there, and he's just as vicious, which should potentially hurt Steamboat that little bit more. It's brilliant storytelling that you would do that. if you were in a fight and someone had a weak point, you would focus on that weak point. It just absolutely makes sense.
We have more back and forth. I mean, there's quite a bit going on in this match to sort of try and break it down in the way we might normally do, Magsy. As I mentioned, Ricky Steamboat hits an electric chair. He also tries a splash off the top, but Regal gets his knees up. Regal straight away upon that then goes back to the ribs again and then applies this wonderful backbreaker submission hold. It's almost like a one-shouldered torture rack, but has him draped over as I love that. Such a simple move, but when you've got a guy as big, as strong as Regal, applying it to somebody who is still quite a big guy in Steamboat, but who can sell the way he does, it really looks, fantastic for me. And again, it comes back to everyone kind of knows what it feels like to have a joint bent in the wrong direction or to have your back twisted or something like that. And this again is showing that in that submission move, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's the ingenious way that the moves are pulled off. I mean, there's a move near the end of the match where Ricky Steamboat has Regal in a hammerlock, but he's also got Regal's other arm trapped underneath him in another hammerlock, which is just really brilliant technical wrestling. And every time that Regal tries to escape, Steamboat is using his head and his shoulder to force Regal's body weight over to get pins. It's just brilliant. Brilliant technical wrestling. And then there's a point where both guys are absolutely shattered, but Regal is trying for a surfboard. He's not able to quite get it, but he's then able, he still is using his body weight and the limbs of Steamboat to apply as much pressure to the rib cage as possible. It's just brilliant storytelling and technical wrestling. It's so clever, so very clever. And then we get to the end, which, if it's the one dampener on the match, I suppose, but it makes sense in terms of the storyline. So we've got Regal, he throws Steamboat out of the ring. Steamboat is able to skin the cat, which for me didn't make a lot of sense, because surely after taking 15 minutes of punishment on them ribs, skinning the cat would be the last thing that you're able to do.
Yeah, and that kind of goes against everything we've just praised it for, doesn't it, really?
Yeah. And then the finish comes when William cracks Steamboat in the ribs again with the umbrella. And that leads to Regal getting the German suplex and the pin and winning the title. If it wasn't for that little section where Steamboat forgot that his ribs were hurting, this match could have been an almost perfect match.
Before we get to that, though, there was one more moment I did want to touch upon. Steamboat's finisher at the time was a crossbody from the top rope.
It was.
Literally right before the finish, Steamboat goes for the crossbody off the top rope, which he's defended this title with, won other titles with, etc., etc. He hits the crossbody. Regal looks like he's done.
He rolls through. Yeah.
Right. Steamboat collapses to the side of the ring, holding his ribs because he's used his body as a weapon and can't make the cover in time, which means that when Regal kicks out at 2.5, it made sense, because we're coming back to the rib injury, which started right at the very beginning of the match as a story point, and it has a massive effect in the finish. It's just brilliant, simple wrestling storytelling for me.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And do you know what they followed up this match with on the pay-per-view?
Wasn't there a guy called Sky? Tall Sky, Big Sky, something like that?
No, I didn't mean the match. I meant straight after the pay-per-view, an interview with the fucking Nasty Boys.
Oh, God.
Yeah, proper shat on it. Proper shat on it.
I hate the Nasty Boys. Magsy, I'm intrigued. Out of 10, what do you got?
I did not go into this with much hope. What I tend to do is I see the ratings on Cage Match, and I look for the ratings from Shaggy Dave. And this match was not very well received from Mr. Meltzer at all. So I was thinking, this is going to be horrific. But I fucking loved it. I loved it. Almost every second of this, I watched with my jaw on the floor. I knew William Regal was an amazing wrestler. I knew Ricky Steamboat was an amazing wrestler. But this match was beyond amazing. I can't go less than 9 for this match. And it would have probably got a 10 if it wasn't for that skin in the cat nonsense at the end. I loved it. I loved the storyline. I loved the way that they're stuck to selling the injuries. I love the focus on the injuries. I loved, as you mentioned, the fact that wrestlers weren't magically recovering, and they were showing that they were injured and they were tired and they were desperate to win. This was a brilliant, brilliant match. So I'm going 9.
Okay. I've got 8.5. So a smidge lower, but not much in it again. I wonder then, just playing devil's advocate, we watch pro wrestling now, and pro wrestling now is predominantly in the mainstream a certain style. Obviously, different companies work different styles, but the main wrestling style, I suppose, now you have the WWE way of doing things, and then you have the AEW way of doing things, and more so of AEW than WWE, but WWE can fall into this as well. You have the faults that we have discussed today with the modern day product. Do you think that we've rated this match as high as we have and enjoyed it as much as we have because we're watching this out of context when we're surrounded by what's going on in the modern era? So by direct comparison to what we're used to with modern day wrestling, this looks as good as it does because it doesn't fall into the traps that a lot of modern matches do. Whereas Meltzer and his mates, who didn't rate it very highly back in 93, would have been watching similar product all the time. So it wouldn't have stood out as much. Is that a possibility?
I mean, yeah, that absolutely does make sense. And I suppose it's also the fact that it harkens back to the style of wrestling that I grew up with, because it wasn't all half flying. It wasn't all 50 flips and 50 super kicks. It reminds me of an era where technical ring mat-based wrestling was the thing that made wrestling outstanding instead of the half-flying, death-defying flip. So perhaps if we'd have watched a few matches from this era in a row, it may not have got as much of a high rating. But if looking at it, the fact that I've never watched this match before, that I didn't have any high hopes for this match before, I think the fact that it blew me away with how technically excellent this match was, that's probably it gives me a bias, I suppose, but I would still heartily recommend this match to anyone who hasn't seen it, just to see how the fundamentals of wrestling can tell a story way better than 50 code red Canadian destroyers and a bunch of super kicks and backflips and shooting star presses could ever do.
We always come back to it, Magsy, don't we? Give me a reason to care.
Exactly.
Okay, so massively intrigued now, hugely interested. Are you gonna, as soon as you enjoyed this little, dipping your toe into 1993 WCW, are we sticking with WCW with you, or are you gonna let me down and go somewhere else? What would you like to put forward as your potential link in the chain for next week's poll?
Of course, I'm not sticking around with this Billy Bollocks fucking ye olde wrestling.
You bastard!
I said at the top of this review that one of these wrestlers had never made an appearance on Chain Wrestling, and that is an absolute travesty. So I want to watch that wrestler again because Steven Regal is a hidden gem in the world of wrestling. The guy is so damn good. He just got wrestling. And then I looked on Cage Match at his most highest rated matches, thinking we should watch something really, really good because Steven Regal is really, really good. And 3 of his top 4 are against someone who murdered his wife and kid. So, but the joint highest one, it serves 2 purposes for me. One, because it winds you up, because it'll wind you up definitely. Because you mentioned on your podcast with Charlie that you hate multi-man ladder matches, and this is a multi-man ladder match.
Okay.
And 2, it's got one of the most iconic moments in a ladder match in the history of wrestling. So I want to go back to 2006 Armageddon, and the match is Brian Kendrick and Paul London versus Matt and Jeff Hardy versus Joey Mercury and Johnny Nitro versus Dave Taylor and William Regal in a ladder match. And it is the match where Joey Mercury's face explodes into 1,000 pieces when he's hit with the ladder.
Yes, indeed. Kendrick and London as well. They were a great little tag team for a while. They were great, weren't they? You know, Paul London. Oh, Sharon in the chat saying already she loves Paul London. Yeah, we met him when he wrestled down at the Low Centre down here. Top bloke, real nice fella. There's some talent in that ring, isn't there? Johnny Nitro, the Hardys, Taylor. There's some real talent there. And that spot with the face getting smashed is quite
brutal. It's brutal. But yeah, that's his joint highest rated Dave Meltzer match at 4.25 stars. He's never had a 5-star, hasn't William Regal?
Oh, okay, interesting. I have also, not used Dave Meltzer, but I have also used a star rating to help choose my match. I went on Cage Match and had a little look there as to what people have rated certain matches by certain wrestlers to see where they stand and so on. You will be happy to know, Max, as you have travelled forward in time from 1993 and jumped a ship to WWE, WWF. I have gone backwards in time and stuck. Of
course you have. You've gone back to 1960 and fucking Sputnik Monroe.
I have not gone far. I have gone back in time just 3 years. Well, 2.5, maybe something to Halloween Havoc of 1990. The link here, there's a couple of different links. You could say the link is WCW. There's one of them. Another link is that Arn Anderson wrestles on this show later on, and he's involved in the match. Arn Anderson is synonymous with the TV title. This match we just talked about was the TV title. So lots of different links there. So there you go. But I wanted to look at an Arn Anderson match because he's one of my favourite wrestlers of all time. I think the guy's fantastic. And talking about the television title today, Arn held the TV title for numerous reigns. When they do that thing where they add up the days of all their title reigns, Arn, even though Booker T had the most title reigns for the TV title, Arn held it for longer than anyone else. So he's quite synonymous with this championship when it comes to singles wrestling. But one of his highest rated matches won't surprise anyone to know that it's a tag match because Arn was obviously very famous, a tag team wrestler. So I would like to go back to Halloween Havoc 1990 and see a match for the WCW tag team titles. And I would like to have a look at Arn Anderson partnering with Ric Flair to take on the tag team. And you can cue on the audio version that glorious, ridiculous entrance theme now. The tag team of Doom. Doom, 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 doom. Doom, 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 doom. But that's what I'd like to look at, mate. I'd like to have a look at that. It goes 20-odd minutes. It's got some really, really good ratings on Cage Match and so on. So I think that could be quite an interesting watch.
Well, vote for me, folks, so you don't have to watch that shit.
No, don't. Of course. That shit is just some bloke getting his face smashed in, and you might get a glimpse of Melina's arse when she does her ring entrance. Fuck that off. Come watch Doom versus Arn Anderson and Flair.
Okay.
There you go.
Know what
so those are those are your options for this week's poll, which will be up. Well, I'm editing this live show as soon as we are done here tonight. So the show will be dropping Tuesday. So the poll will probably be up Wednesday. I expect something like that. So make sure you jump onto our Twitter account at @chain_wrestling to vote for which way you would like the chain to go next week, which link you would like to look at, and which match you would like us all to discuss next week. We have the options of a 4-way tag team ladder match. We have Brian Kendrick and Paul London versus the Hardys versus Joey Mercury and Johnny Nitro versus Dave Taylor and William Regal from the 2006 Armageddon pay-per-view. Yes, that one, he smashes his face to bits. Or we go to Halloween Havoc 1990 and we see Doom versus Arn Anderson and Ric Flair for the WCW tag team titles. Make sure you're voting, retweeting, and all that good stuff. Comment in the chat you've highlighted there for me, Magsy. What is that one? Can you bring Pixie's bowl downstairs with you, please, my love? Well, we're not finishing just yet, Shah. We've got another segment to go and all sorts. So if you want the cats fed right away, you'll have to come get it yourself, I'm afraid. But I will bring it down when the show is done. Okay. Magsy, shall we have a quick scan through the chat now, or shall we look at some more Hulk Hogan bullshit?
Well, we might as well go through the chat because Dan Griffin has gone absolutely ham with his comparison. So firstly, if you remember this one, he said Danny Mills looked like someone drew a frown on a ball sack. He then goes, Alan Shearer, mildly disgruntled egg. Spot on. Gary Lineker, shit Jeff Goldblum impersonator. Amazing. Gary Neville, the weird-looking little brother from the Fallout Amazon Prime series. Is that the guy we've only got half a nose? I think it's him.
What's in that?
Shock. Roy Keane, bitter, unemployed mall Santa. Definitely. Michael Owen looks like Michael Owen, ain't Michael Owen. Oh,
yeah. He talks a load of shit as well, doesn't he, Michael Owen?
It's so boring, cunt, isn't it? So boring.
Yeah.
Richard Keys, as the above, but older, and a misogynist. Amazing.
So as above. So it's Richard. He looks like Richard Keys has eaten Michael Owen. Is that what he's?
I think he means Richard Keys looks like he ate Richard Keys, but also hates women. Okay. And then the only one of Sharon's that we haven't covered is that she loves Paul London. So yeah, that's the chat all caught up with.
Great stuff, mate. Great stuff. Shall we see what the orange one has been spiting this time?
Okay, let's go for it.
Well, let me tell you something, brother.
Liar, liar, pants on fire, hanging from a telephone wire. Squirming, pants are burning. When I lie, my hips start turning.
Wow, that's unbelievable. Look, man, I made a mistake.
What do you got for us, Mags?
Well, this one's actually going to be a little bit of a change of pace for Hulk Hogan.
Oh, okay.
So we all know that Hulk lies through his back teeth, but when he shows his true character, it's usually when he's been the most honest, and it's at times like that that we have to believe him. So lest we forget the 2015 recording of Hogan saying the N-word, and in the near decade since that, he's apologized multiple times. But it's clear that he hasn't self-reflected and he hasn't changed his horrific racist mindset. So in July, an influencer on social media called Essence Jannar was hired as a brand ambassador for Hulk Hogan's new product, the Real American Beer. Essence is an African-American woman, and she was quickly fired from that brand ambassador role during her first day on the job and was replaced by a white woman. Hogan then, later in the month, appeared at the Republican National Convention supporting Donald Trump, and he was championing his fellow orange clown and his draconian oppressive policies. And then lastly, at a press conference to promote his Real American Beer, he started repeating some of his Donald Trump aligned views. But this time he went a little bit further and started actually attacking Donald's Democratic rival, Kamala Harris. And at first it started off the typical Hulk Hogan catchphrases. He said to the crowd, should he body slam Kamala or should he drop the leg on Kamala? But whilst he's doing this, he's purposely saying her name wrong. Her name is Kamala, as in Calm Allah, but he's calling her Kamala, as in Kamala the wrestler. Another trope that Donald Trump had been carrying on with. And because this is a very Republican crowd, they're cheering and whooping at this. So this is when Hogan felt brave enough to show his true, ugly, racist side. He asked the audience if Kamala, real name Kamala, was a chameleon. He also asked if she was Indian. He then did a very offensive, stereotypical greeting that is often associated with Native Americans. I mean, yeah, I think you can work out what I'm getting at. So, for context, this is, like I said, this has been an attack point towards Kamala from Trump. So Kamala Harris is biracial. Her dad was born in Jamaica and her mum was born in India. She was not Native American. So not only was Hogan being racist, he also got the race wrong. So he's a fucking idiot. And then because he knows what he's doing, he said he's going to catch heat for that one. And he quickly added, that was not me, that was the beer talking. So this week, we haven't got a Hogan lie, we've got a Hogan truth. And the truth is, he's a fucking orange racist bastard.
What an arsehole. What just an absolute fuck. Oh.
Just a dick.
And it's such a shame, isn't it? It's such a shame because obviously my preference on pro wrestling is to be entertained in the ring, and Hogan wasn't always the greatest when it came to entertaining people in the ring, with regards to the type of wrestling I enjoy. But when I was a tiny little kid, I was a Hulkamaniac. This is a hero of mine. He helped get me into wrestling in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
It's just such a shame when you're an adult and you kind of get those illusions shattered, Maxie, isn't it? By somebody being a big fucking racist piece of shit.
Yeah, he's a wanker. Hulk Hogan, if you are listening, you are a prick.
I imagine if Hogan was listening, we'd probably be in a lot more trouble by now. We've done at least 100 off.
Yeah, he's a knobhead.
He is.
But in this day and age, to be racist is... I just don't understand the mindset.
No.
I just do not understand the mindset. Fuck you, Hulk
But there
Hogan.
we go. Fuck you, Hulk Hogan, indeed. There we go then, Mags. That's been a bumper show, hasn't it? Gone nearly 2 hours, 45 minutes. I've had an absolute blast. I want to thank everybody again in the CWF who has joined us live. Everyone who listens on the audio version later in the week, thanks to you as well. It's glorious, and I love putting together the audio version and editing the music and the sound effects and whatever for you. It's one of the highlights of my week, sitting there doing that when we finish the live show. And of course, everyone who contributed to the show via Twitter, Facebook, and everything else. Again, Magsy and I say every week, this is your show. Thank you for making it as good as it is. Magsy, do you want to let everyone know whereabouts they can find your good self online in case they wish to do so?
Here at Pod Farmer Mags. I think that's my TikTok, where I do videos of chickens and vegetables and currently hot tubs as well. So there is that. Or you can find me on the X, where it's Pod Farmer Mags, and I actually replied to a DM today that I got sent in the middle of August. So, UTT Rob, you are welcome. Other than that, I probably won't reply to you. So there's probably no point following me.
Fair enough. Anything I'm involved in, you can find on the network that carries this show. So that is at SJP World Media on Facebook, Twitter, Spotify, here on YouTube, all the podcast providers, platforms, players, etc., etc. Make sure you're following there. And of course, the main SJP World Media feed carries all sorts of shows from many wonderful, far more talented hosts than I. We have the Doctor Who pod, looking at different Doctor Who stories every week. We have Benny Mac doing various good stuff on the SJP World Media feed as well, looking at pro wrestling and all sorts of other stuff as well. Tyler Peters has 2 shows with the network. Tyler Talks Music, and of course Tyler's Takedowns,
Brilliant
looking at pro
content.
wrestling events and stuff. Absolutely superb. And the fact that Tyler can do so many of those topics solo and then switch it up and interview an independent wrestler from his area, and it's equally as entertaining, is amazing to me. I bow down to this guy. He's an incredibly talented individual. I just wish he realised it, because he doesn't. He needs to understand how good he fucking is.
Yes.
Like I said, all sorts going on. We've got What Charlie Thinks as well with my 14-year-old daughter, looking at all sorts of different topics that she's not seen before, whether it's wrestling matches, listening to music, TV shows, and just giving her viewpoint, giving her thoughts as a 14-year-old, seeing some things that we may have seen in our youth for the first time. But that's all on at SJP World Media, and each show has its own spin-off feed as well. If you don't want to listen to pro wrestling, you can just check out the Doctor Who pod, and so I'll just search it up. It's that easy. But most importantly, you can find and follow this show itself on Facebook and Twitter, as Maxie has brilliantly put at the bottom of our screen there, ticking along for the duration of our episode tonight, at @chain_wrestling. That's at @chain_wrestling. And that is where you will find our non-wrestling topic, the poll for the wrestling match that we head to each week, and the rest of the CWF to interact with as well. So make sure you jump in on there. Brilliant stuff. Maxie, I have had an absolute blast. Thank you so much again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to everyone who is out there again. I'm off now to go and try some of this Biscoff stuff, because apparently it's not disgusting coffee flavoured. Bonus. I'll speak to you next week, my friend.
Nobody cares what Barry Windham thinks.